WMDs. But Microbial Warrior, that's our training program, and Normie actually mirror each other so much because we're both dealing with biological contaminants. And I believe that both really our tactical approach pretty much is the same. We want to contain, control,
Right.
neutralize, and remove the contaminant safely based on science.
Well, like you said, we're very similar. You as an organization go into much more detail on the forensic side. And again, you're talking about crime scene cleanup, which is a
Sure.
whole different sector of the industry. Yes, it's remediation, but not due to a microbial problem. And then when you get into the chemistry side of it, like fentanyl, we're dealing more of a hazmat situation,
Correct.
more so than even lead and asbestos. I mean, this is something that just by touch can enter your system and seriously affect your health. So your training is very specialized with that. I know when I was talking with Lori earlier today, and we talked about some of the teaching that she does, she was talking about using real life situations where your classes, you're using blood to clean up. She had this kind of like smirk on her face when she said animal brains and things like that, because it makes
That's
it real.
my wife.
It makes it realistic.
Well, it has to be. And, to me, that's not really a big deal that we use real biological contaminants.
Mhm.
And now I see that, there's some other trainers going out, and they're saying, we use real blood. I'm like, well, that's not very stimulating to me. That's like saying we've got a water class and we're using real water. You
Yeah.
should train to what you're going to go and engage
Absolutely.
in. This is, of course, microbial warfare. And so we want to go out and deal as close to combat situations as we can and make it realistic. Some people think they want to do this, and then they find out really fast they can't even perform under simulated microbial warrior conditions.
Well, I know things like the odor bothers people,
Sure.
and that's something that can make people sick and leave the environment. But I was over by your booth earlier, and you guys somehow talked me into putting a helmet on, which is a breathing apparatus that replaces masks.
Mhm.
With the positive pressure in there, I think that's like eliminating the odor problem, isn't it?
Sure, if you put an OV filter on that, and a lot of people use those. I don't. Okay, I grew up. You never forget the smell of death.
No.
Okay, but let me be honest. My clients are not going to be wearing one when they walk in at the end of a job. I need to know what this smells like.
Oh, understood.
And we do
Understood.
not use deodorizers in any fashion or form. We use no masking agents. If you have an odor, you have a source. What's the general rule? Remove the source, you'll remove the odor.
Correct. And if you're using a masking agent, never mind hiding the odor itself, you're creating more of a VOC or chemical problem in
Absolutely.
the environment.
Absolutely. So we need to think about, not only what are we cleaning and why? What's the source of contaminant? Is it mold? Is it biologicals? Is it blood? Is it human decomposition? What is the contaminant? But also, how are we leaving that? What type of chemicals are we using? And, we saw just insanity during COVID.
Yeah.
People were going in and spraying everything under the sun with no forethought of how's that going to affect that surface in the long term.
Correct. Correct. And again, if any of you aren't sure about the timeline, that's when the world ran out of toilet paper, I believe it was.
Yeah.
Yeah. And again, panicking, people not knowing what to do. And that's what happens.
Well, you know what? I did an interview on COVID on January 3rd, 2020. And at that time, when I did the interview, there were 2.5 cases in the United States. And I had the numbers, it was like, oh, there's 17 in Italy. And
Right.
that's how low it was at that time. So there are 2.5 cases. 2 were in a nursing home in Washington State, and the 0.5 was in Chicago because they had not been declared positive yet.
Right.
So a couple weeks later, we got a call for a very large scale unattended death in a 2-story condo, and everything had to be emptied out. Everything had to be deconned. Everything had to be cleaned. Everything had to be disinfected. Everything had to be tested. And it took us 3.5 days to do that. There was a lot of contents, and it was really bad. At the end of it, because this was just inside of Texas. We drove back at the end of the day, and I walked into the kitchen. I said, "Oh, I need to go get some creamer because I want some coffee in the morning." And I hadn't been to a store and
Yeah.
during the duration. I walked into the store and I was like, "What happened?" Well, because I was focused on my job.
Yeah.
Like all the toilet paper was gone, all the soup was gone. I was like,
Yeah.
"What happened?" People just lost their minds.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if you ever saw it. It's a short video that they play online every once in a while about the got to get the bread and milk.
Yes.
Guy running around panicking because it's going to snow.
Yeah,
it's the same
yeah.
thing. Gotta get the bread and milk, and just pure panic. And a lot of that was hyped with the media.
Of
We knew that
course.
was a problem. But COVID, like a lot of other things, was a serious situation. Have you ever dealt with things where you had to wear, I guess it's called a level 4 suit, where you're basically built into the suit?
We are at level 3 when we're working
Okay.
on that. Okay. If I were to put on that level of protection, SCBAs and stuff, that means I'm working on a full blown something like a fentanyl distribution center.
Right.
And so, we have 3 levels of contaminants when we're dealing with 3 threat levels when we're dealing with the remediation of fentanyl. Definitely the most dangerous contaminant of our lives. Oh, but don't worry, they'll come up with something new.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, just the thought process of creating more things like that.
Sure.
If they could turn that into positive, imagine how far advanced we would be.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Unfortunately, and this is the real world. There are bad people that don't want us on this planet simply because this is where we
I
grew
keep
up.
telling people that and they don't believe me. No, you're absolutely right. And the seriousness of it is we need to be trained to deal with this stuff. We need to be aware of it because just throwing out garbage and touching stuff that had fentanyl on it is enough that could kill you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So it all comes down to, on a professional level, training, tactics, techniques, and tools. And notice I said it in that order: training,
Right.
tactics, techniques, and tools. Too many times, people in the restoration industry get wrapped up in the newest sprayer, the newest this gadget and everything. And that's not where it's at. You've got to have a protocol.
Yes.
You want to be able to contain, control, neutralize, and remove that contaminant, and ask yourself, what are we cleaning and why?
Why was the word I was going for? Because you can buy the tools. Why'd you buy that?
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to go take care of this. Are you trained to? Well, we'll figure it out. You can't figure this out. This is too dangerous.
This is the one part of the industry, whether it's mold or whether it's some of the dangerous contaminants I work with. Here's the word you do not want to hear. Oops.
Yeah. Yeah, we joked about that when I was on the police department with the guys from the bomb squad, and they used to have sayings in the back of their shirts: "If you see me running, try to keep up." You don't want that.
We talk about, training tactics, techniques, and tools, and we talk about our end. But, I think one of the things that we always need to stay focused on, no one calls you, no one calls me because they're having a good day.
Yeah.
And so what we also need to keep in mind, but our prime directive of safety, but that client, that has potentially dangerous mold and contaminants in their house, or in my end, that client that may have lost a loved one. Okay. If we handle these people with care, compassion, and concern, and base all of this on science, and conduct ourselves with honor and integrity, there's no way you cannot succeed.
Agreed. Have you ever come across any radioactive situations?
No, I have not.
It's a very strange feeling because I've come across the scenes that would qualify as a crime scene cleanup and stuff like that from my previous life. And I came across one situation with radiation.
Really?
And there's a definite change in the way that you feel because it's such an unknown to the general public. And I'm considering myself general public in this because I am not trained in that level of a response. With the police department, we responded to a burglar alarm. As we went into the building, we hit a door that said, "Do not go beyond this point, radiation." The guys that I was with, they started backing out. had me there as a supervisor. Turned out it was a storage place for ground sensing equipment,
Okay.
and they use radiation to do that. Well, it was safe, very small chips, and they have to mark the building, but it was an extremely unsettling feeling being there and knowing what to do. We backed out,
Right.
because we're not trained in that type of response.
Right. And you know what? That's one thing that, like, especially new remediators, whether it is mold or whether it is on the forensic end and stuff, need to realize their limitations and need to know when to pull back and call and ask for some expert consultation and help.
That's something that actually needs to be taught, because people don't realize it. People are, in general, pleasers. They want to have the answer. If they don't have it, they try to make it up. And in our line of work, that can be very, very dangerous.
Absolutely. Remember the Clint Eastwood movie, Magnum Force?
Yes.
The line he used in that, man's got to know his limitations.
It's absolutely correct.
Absolutely correct.
I've seen it from the emergency services side. You've seen it. You were in the military. People do things that, beer muscles, if you want to call it, here, hold my beer, I'm going in, that's where you get hurt. And if you're doing a job and you need to climb up and reach something, you don't have a ladder, you don't stack 4 chairs on top of each other and try to climb it. But people do. And then you laugh about it afterwards. Could you believe what this guy did? Could have seriously gotten hurt. The same problem with these microbes and chemistries and all the biohazards we come in contact with. Not wearing the right equipment is the same thing as standing on 4 chairs piled high.
Absolutely. Have people died cleaning up after fentanyl? Yes, they have.
Yes.
Okay. And so we need to be aware of that.
Yeah. And it's not just coming in contact with a lab. Our remediators, our assessors, you're going into homes, into businesses that it's an unknown. You don't know what's there. Should you be wearing gloves? Absolutely. PPE? Yes, you really need it, even in a normal looking environment, because what is normal? You never
If it was
know.
normal, you wouldn't be there.
Exactly. They've called for a reason.
We're biological SWAT teams. Okay.
Okay. Yeah. I haven't looked at it like that, but yeah, I guess it would fit. But that's this industry. And as we look around, there's people all over here from all over the country. Actually, there's a lot of people here from Australia and the UK. They come to this show because they get to see people in the industry, their peers, how they work, how they do things, the training available. They meet people like you with the technology and the upper level training that you do, that even with our most advanced training, we don't cover crime scene and cleanup. So this is the place to be in a show like this.
I love being around my peers and colleagues here, because I pick up things left and right.
Yeah. It's, a good experience. And I'm glad you were here and had time to talk.
Thank you so much.
It's always a pleasure.
Thanks, Lance.
I told Lori I'd really like to get into one of your classes one day.
Oh, we'd love to have you.
I think it would be of a big interest and value for me.
Anytime.
So,
the door's open.
We'll hold you to that.
Okay.
All righty. Take care. Thank you. Okay, and we are back at the Experience Show here in Chattanooga, and we now have somebody special here. And yes, I'm giving you a bigger build-up because, when you start going up the pyramid and you have different players that you're talking to, eventually you get to the top. And I think that's where we're at. This is Scott Walters from BNP Media, and I guess you're like the top of the pyramid for what's going on here and all the trade shows you do.
Well, thank you for that elaborate introduction, Lance. I don't know how true it is, but I'm happy to support Normie, and we're glad Normie's part of the experience, and we love everything you guys are doing, and I'm happy to sit here and have a conversation with you. Absolutely.
Well, that's appreciated. And truthfully, the experience is just one of the shows that you do, and you're involved with media production and everything else. What actually do you guys do at BNP?
So BNP Media is a 4th generation family owned business. B2B media. We cover many different sectors. We're in obviously restoration, remediation, cleaning, but we're also in security, packaging.
You might want to just keep the mic a little closer. There's a lot of background noise.
Okay.
There you go.
We're also in security, manufacturing, architecture, construction, food, beverage, packaging. We cover a lot of different business sectors. I'm the chief events officer, so I oversee all of BNP's in-person and online events. And then I also have P&L responsibilities for all of our webinars, our video, and our podcast business. So we're a full service B2B media company, and the in-person event business is what I primarily oversee.
Well, I mean, you touched on a lot of stuff that we do. Obviously, we do live streaming TV. We do live radio broadcasting. We're on 6 different radio platforms, streaming radio, and 13 podcast platforms. So I can't imagine what you're going through dealing with all the live shows all over the country too. I know logistics of that.
Yeah, we do. At BNP, we do over 50 in-person events a year. It's a huge, obviously, revenue generator for the company. We have a full service events division, marketing, operations, logistics, everything's in-house. So yeah, the events business is very important to BNP Media.
And the Experience Show is new to you guys.
That's right. Yep.
You're new owners of it.
Yeah, we purchased the Experience events, the spring conference and trade show in the spring, and then the fall trade show in Las Vegas from Larry Cooper in 2022. We took ownership of the two events in 23. Larry and his team helped with us on that transition. So they were still very much a part of, the transition period there. But this year in 2024 is the first year that we're Cooperless, for lack of a better term. And the way the community has rallied and all the participation and support we've been given has quite frankly been overwhelming. So yeah, we're excited to be the new owners. It fits nicely under our R&R brand magazine as a sub-product of that magazine. And, we're happy to be here.
So the training wheels are off. I don't see any skin knees or elbows. So this is all good. And, we've been to both shows that you guys have been in control of, and we've been to a lot of the shows that Larry had over the years. And it's exciting. We're looking forward to the next show, which is in Vegas. That's your big show of the year.
Yep.
And, I understand you're already selling booths and selling out all kinds of services for that already. And we're just now into this one.
Yeah, the spring show is by design a smaller event. It's East Coast based. It rotates. Last year it was in Fort Lauderdale. The year before that it was in Cincinnati. It goes to these kind of tier 2 cities to be more relevant to a greater portion of the population in the community in the restoration remediation space. The Las Vegas show stays in Las Vegas. It's at Caesars Forum. It's the first week of September. I think this year the dates are the 5th through the 8th or something like that. It's that Tuesday through Friday after Labor Day each year. And that is the bigger of the two events. Yes, we've been selling booth space. We've got, I think, about 35% of the floor already pre-sold. We're selling booth space here at this event before the fall. And then obviously, we're moving forward with selling space and sponsorships for Las Vegas. That's the big one.
I'll make a suggestion for the Vegas show. You need a Segway rental division, because the walking, it is so massive there, all the buildings. I mean, it's exciting to be able to go through that kind of an event. It's big.
Yeah. The Forum is, as you know, across the street over a walkway in the Close Hotel in Vegas. Everything looks good on a map. Oh, it's right across the street. I'll get right to it. But nothing in Vegas is close. So, yeah, there is definitely, maybe that's a side business we could work up.
There you go.
Segway rental.
Segways are us.
Sponsorships on top of that. Normie produced or provided. You guys might get some action on that.
Well, we'll talk. We got some time.
I like an idea guy. That's good.
You know what? It's out of the box that the box comes in. That's the way to do it. Well, I know you're busy. You got a lot of stuff going on here, but I do appreciate you stopping by and saying hello to everybody. And again, the top of the pyramid. This is what I was looking for.
Well, I like reaching the top of the pyramid too. I know you and Doug are co-partners in crime here. No pun intended, but it's a pleasure working with you guys. You're true professionals, and
thank you.
Thank you very much for your support. We really appreciate it.
All righty. Thank you, sir.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, or morning, I guess. Good morning. Good morning. Yeah, so I'm sure that Bo told you when we created Normie in 2004, one of the interesting things was what we created it primarily for the Louisiana licensing law. And the Louisiana licensing law was the first law to go into effect for mold remediators in the country. So it was the first licensing law, and then what happened in 2005? Katrina. And so we were right there able to help, I think, a lot of people with some of the issues that were of a concern to us. I'm not sure if he talked about the difference between the IICRC and us, but they come from the business more from we're not competitors, by the way. As you know, if you're an IICRC person, you get continuing education credits off of this class. So we work together. We just look at the industry differently. They come from the water restoration side of the business. We come from the building side of the business. And one of the reasons why we do that is not just my background with my licensing, but the main reason we do that is because we try to look at the house and the problem that they're experiencing in terms of a mold issue as a holistic kind of problem, not just fix this problem and everything is great, but think in terms of how we can actually improve their indoor air quality. So when I was moved to New Orleans in 2002, I was actually doing some of the things that you guys are doing now and some of the things that we would recommend that you do in terms of ongoing IAQ management, which is what we call our sanitization protocol. How you create an environment in which mold won't grow. And that was really based on my book, Mold Free Construction, which you have access to if you have the Normie app. We do have an audio version there, so you can just listen to it. Might put you to sleep, but you can listen to it if you like, because it's on iTunes and on Audible as an audio book. But the sanitization protocol really does improve people's indoor environment, so you have the ability to do that. And I just want to tell you about somebody that I met when I was in New Orleans. I was doing some trade shows, and and a radio program, and I got a call from a lady. Her name was Laura DeRocher, and she had 4 children. And her youngest child, who was 8, had some very severe sinus issues. In fact, as she was talking to me, she had, of all 4 of her children, the other 3 had constantly been to the allergist every month. Now think about that for a second. Every month, for years, they had been to this allergy doctor. And she had found some mold up in the kitchen area over one of the cabinets, and she was concerned about how that might be affecting their kids, because she heard me on the radio and she knew that mold was an indoor air quality problem. She'd never really thought about that before. It's mold, how could it affect my children's health? But she was putting 2 and 2 together. She was saying, maybe there is a problem here with this mold that I'm seeing. So I went out there and I did the assessment. It took the sanitization protocol. It was not the amount of mold or the type of mold, or there wasn't a moisture problem that actually was causing the mold. It was actually a HVAC problem with the relative humidity. So we did the sanitization protocol, put it in place just like you see it today, exactly the same protocol. And she was really excited because in about a week she was feeling better. Her kids seemed to be feeling better. She wasn't sure. But the interesting thing that she told me when I was there visiting her was that her little child, the one that was just a few months old, they had scheduled that baby for surgery, sinus surgery. And she said, we've decided to kind of put it off because things seem to be going better. We'll see how this goes. Well, interesting story to kind of shorten everything up. About a year and a half later, maybe 2 years later, I got a call from her and she said, I got to tell you an interesting story. She said, first of all, I got a phone call from my pediatric physician, the allergist. He was concerned that we had switched doctors because I haven't taken my kids to the allergist in almost a year. We decided not to do surgery for the baby, and the baby is doing great. Now, a couple of years old, doesn't seem to have any allergies to the environment and what's going on. She said, I think you really solved a bigger problem than you maybe think you solved. The reason I'm telling you that story is because we hear that story over and over and over and over again. Maybe not quite as dramatic, but we hear that story over and over and over again. You are in a very, very important industry. You may not realize it, but one of the reasons why it's regulated is because you're dealing with people's health. The health of your employees, the health of your clients. That's what you're dealing with. And rather than thinking about just being a mold assessor or just being a mold remediator, as Mo's probably told you, we want you to think in terms of being an indoor air quality professional, because that's really what you're doing. I'm sure Mo told you already that when you start cleaning up mold problems in an environment, It's almost like a surrogate of other things that are going on in the environment. If you're reducing the mold, you're also reducing some of the other contaminants, the bacteria, the viruses, the particulates, some of the other stuff that's going on in the environment. So you can make a gigantic change to the environment. So our goal is for you to really think in terms of becoming an indoor air quality professional. And this is really the first step. If you haven't thought about that before, this is really the first step in that direction. And I'll tell you the other thing it'll do for you. I've been in business a very long time. I used to tell people I was self-unemployed in the construction industry. Been in business a really long time. And what you want is you want to edge in the market that makes you different from everybody else. And it's not about price, let me tell you.
The Perfect Fit Filter by Best Living Systems, another innovative product by Best Living Systems that will change the way you breathe indoors. Older style filters use cardboard frames which become quickly filled up with mold and dead skin cells, causing them to flex inward and allow air to go right past the filter. With the Perfect Fit Filter, there is no blow-by. Because there is no cardboard for the mold to eat, this Perfect Fit Filter is designed with a sturdy internal frame and sized to fit virtually any size opening. It allows the edges of the filter media to enclose the frame of your return air grills, so every cubic inch of air is filtered. No reason to go searching for your specific size in your local big box store. The Perfect Fit Filter is shipped directly to you when you need them. In a home or office environment, this incredible 1-inch filter provides MERV 7 protection to serve as a 90-day filter. How can you leave this filter in for 90 days? Popular pleated filters provide tiny crevices where mold and bacteria get trapped. Because you are bringing to their nests dead skin cells and other organic materials, the microbes find a safe harbor, an environment where they can grow and reproduce. This is called bionesting, and the Perfect Fit Filter reduces the possibility of these microbes contaminating the air we breathe. Because the Perfect Fit Filter is rated with a MERV 7, the industry standard for 1-inch filters, it does not restrict airflow or put unnecessary strain on your air handler. The Perfect Fit Filter, now available by monthly subscription and free shipping at perfectfitfilter.com. The Perfect Fit for people who like to breathe.
Greetings. My name is Doug Hoffman. I'm the Executive Director of NORMI, the National Organization of Remediators and Mold Inspectors. And we were founded in 2004 as a trade association to support guys who were working in the indoor air quality and mold industry. And we've become the approved training provider for 5 states that now require licensing in the mold profession. And that would be Texas, Louisiana, Florida, District of Columbia, and New York. This particular course has been approved by the state of New York for continuing education for home inspectors. We are also an approved training provider for the Home Inspection Board in Florida. And this class is getting a lot of attention because you, in a lot of ways, are kind of on the front line of dealing with clients' concerns about mold issues, but you've not been given a lot of direction and certainly not a certification with the kind of credibility that you need to be able to provide those services to your clients. So I'm very excited about being able to share this information with you, and hopefully you'll take the step to put this in your tool belt as a few options that we're going to show you that will give you some options that you can use to help your clients get the information that they need without putting you in any kind of legal liability. Back in the late 90s or early 2000s, I tell people right after the turn of the century, I was invited to a ladies' home to do a mold assessment. And I was doing very much what we're going to talk about you are doing today, taking a couple of samples, offering a solution. And what was interesting was when I went to her house and started talking with her, she had 4 children. 3 of them had been to the allergist every single month. And the 4th, that was just about 6 or 7 months old, they had scheduled for sinus surgery. Now, remember, this was in the late 90s, early 2000s, and so there was not a lot of information about mold and health concerns and the connection between the two. I felt like we knew something about what some of those issues might be and some of the results of mold allergens, whether it's airborne or actually growing on the surface or producing mycotoxins, which again, we'll talk about in a little bit. But the point was that there wasn't a lot of information out there. And so we did our assessment and we recommended some solutions, which was at that time called the sanitization protocol. And we cleaned up the little bit of mold that was there. It was really not very much at all, a little bit on the ceiling. We cleaned it up, put in place our sanitization protocol, which included air filtration products and air purification technologies, plus some natural all-purpose cleaners so that they wouldn't be dealing with the toxic chemistries. And an interesting thing happened. She was so excited after 3 or 4 days that it seemed to her that her children were sleeping better. And about 1.5 years later, I got an interesting telephone call from her. And she said, I want to tell you something that happened to me. I got a phone call from our pediatric physician, and she said he was not happy. And I said, oh, why was he not happy? She said, well, he wasn't happy because we haven't seen him in over 1 year, and he thought we had switched doctors. We canceled the surgery that we had planned for our youngest, and all of our kids are doing great. She said, I think we actually fixed the problem. That was one of the first times that I really began to understand the deep connection between our clients' concerns, real concerns, and the mold issues that seem to persist in a lot of environments. And again, I think in some ways you as home inspectors are on the front line of this, because many times when you do home inspections, someone's going to ask you, hey, it looks like that's mold. What do you think it is? And of course, you've been trained to be very careful about what you say and maybe not even take any samples or not even talk much about it at all, maybe refer it to someone else. But you've been very careful to protect yourself because of the potential liability that's there. And I certainly understand that. We understand that. But in the last year or so, we've actually created a certification through our legal department and our insurance carrier, a legitimate certificate called a certified mold screener. And I want to share with you that information and train you in this process to show you how you could be able to offer services to your client that would be incredibly helpful and help them get the information that they need. Whether they get it from you or from another professional, the point is that you are there on the front line, in some ways the first responder, and you may be able to begin the process and send them on the right path so that they can get the information that they need and not risk any kind of legal liability on your part. That's what I want to talk about. So let me share with you this new training, the Normie Certified Mold Screener.
And hello, everybody. We are back again at the Experience Trade Show in Tennessee. And I am sitting here with Jeff Cross, who is the media director for ISSA and all of their magazine publications.
Correct, Lance. We have 3 media brands: ISSA Today magazine for our members, Cleaning and Maintenance Management for facility cleaning and building service contracting professionals, and CleanFacts for on-location floor cleaning and restoration, which is exactly what this trade show is all about.
Well, I know CleanFacts because that's something we encourage all the students and everything that go to our classes to sign up for. And I believe it's a free publication for them.
It is a free publication to qualified or industry professionals. And I do get those subscription forms from you guys. So thank you for that. It seems like there's a lot of Normie members that want to receive educational content.
Well, you know, we teach about the remediation industry as far as assessment and remediation, but the whole cleaning side is all part of it, the sanitization. So it's a natural fit.
It is. So CleanFacts is a dual publication in a way. We service those that are involved in the cleaning industry, that side of it, and the other half is restoration. So and they both cross borders, right? A lot of cleaning companies do restoration companies do cleaning. Almost every time I talk to a restoration company, it seems like they came from a cleaning background.
You might need to keep the mic up because everybody
It's loud here.
decided to talk now.
That's okay. Pay attention to this one, everyone. This is the one.
That's absolutely everybody. Yeah. Normie Booth right here. We're good. And we got Clean Facts with us, Jeff Cross. I mean, this is it. And the funny part is I do interviews of you, and then different times of year, you're interviewing me.
Yeah. I mean, we're all interesting people, Lance, right?
Is that what that is?
It is. It is. This industry is great. Everyone you talk to has a story to tell, a unique experience to share. So yeah, and that's what I like about coming to these things. I've never missed an experience event or a connections, which is what it was before. And every time I come, it's about the networking, the talking to people, seeing old friends, catching up, and doing interviews at the Normie booth. That's the highlight of my
That's
visit.
it. Yeah. Well, we've only been doing that for a few years, so I don't know what you did all the other years.
This is my second one. I know that.
Yes, it is.
At least.
Yeah, but you mentioned about the people that come to this show. This is a different group of people that come to this show. These people they're like really passionate about this industry, and they come because they want to see the new stuff. They want to touch it and play with it. And that's what the experience is about.
True. I agree with that. And I think everyone here is special. They come for the equipment. They come for what the exhibitors have to offer. But again, to default back to one thing I value is the networking. You never see someone really sitting off by themselves, bored. They're talking to people. They're hanging out. There's the meals. There's the dinners afterwards. So it's just a good experience, as what it's called.
And it was an appropriate name. But ISSA has a show also coming up, don't they?
We do every November. It's in Vegas the last few years. I think we're going to keep it in Vegas for a while. Everyone loves to go to Vegas. So it's a big trade show. 15, 16, 17,000 people come to it. Every year is a little bit different, but it caters to everyone in the cleaning industry. And we get people from all around the world who fly in for that. So it's a heavy lift to put that on. Informa is our partner in that, but it's the ISSA show. ISSAshow.com is the website for that. So anyone wants to come to that, you'll be definitely impressed with everything that is going on at the ISSA show.
Well, I've been to quite a few of them, and they are impressive. Just the size alone, the activity that goes on there. And again, it's about meeting people. All of these different shows, whether they're really crowded or not, you only need that one person to meet to change the complexion of your business.
Exactly. I've talked to a few people at this show and at ISSA show as well. And I asked them, what makes it worth coming to a trade show as an exhibitor? And they find that they're going to have quality conversations. They're going to land some clients. They're not going to have all those touch points they might have with phone call marketing. They're going to talk to them. They're going to have business made right there. And that's the value. So you might not land a whole bunch of clients. Maybe you will, but you're going to get some really good ones that matter.
I found from all the years that I've been going to these types of shows, the people that almost look a little disappointed are the ones that take a booth and think it's a home show. They're here to sell their wares. And that's, people will buy stuff here, but that's not really the purpose of these shows.
No, it's about networking and making those connections. Yeah, if you stand back in your booth and you have stuff sitting out there, there's value to that, but you need to engage and have those conversations. Bring them into your booth, have them sit down, have those conversations that lead to the business that you want. Doesn't happen right there. You've made that connection. There's a follow-up.
In front of our booth, you can't see it. There's a bunch of tables where they have set out. So when they bring food out, people have a place to sit and talk and eat. And that's the part where you sit down and somebody says, is this chair taking? No, sit down. And you're there for an hour talking because now you found something in common, how your business works with theirs. And that's, to me, the value of this.
Agreed. I've never walked up to a table where there's a bunch of people and there's one seat where you weren't welcome to join. And they might all be together, one in company or a family business. But, it's a family in itself. An industry can be fragmented or it can be together and as a family. And that's how I think the cleaning and restoration industries are. They're family. Everyone is in it together. You do meet some who are direct competitors with each other,
right?
But I don't see any problem with that. I think everyone here agrees with that. There's plenty of work to go around. We can help each other and we can help the industry.
Absolutely. So if somebody wanted to get in touch with your magazine or get a copy, where would they go?
So the best, easiest way is go to issa.com/media. That will lead you to everything we do in media, our magazines, our webinars. We do video productions. Have a program called Straight Talk, Take 5 with Clean Facts. So everything is in that portal, isasa.com/media. Or if you want to go to CleanFacts, it's cleanfacts.com. That's the publication specifically for this industry. But all of our brands fit a place in every business when you think about all the things that we do in the cleaning industry.
Okay. Well, I appreciate you taking the time. I know you've been doing some interviews walking around here. I just saw you shooting an interview while I was watching you before you came over here to do your interview. So
we're all busy.
Yes, we are.
It's good.
Yes, we are. I thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Look forward to seeing you at the next show.
All right. We'll see you there.
Take care.
The following broadcast is made possible by supporters of the Normie Environmental Task Force, the Experience Trade Show and Convention, Reusip, EnviroScreening Lab, and Best Living Systems.
I want to welcome today's guest, Sarah Mack from Entropy Labs. Many of you know the lab. It used to be known as Prism Labs, and now it's Entropy, and she's the Director of Business Development. So Sarah, welcome.
Hi, Elliot. Thanks for having me.
Glad to have you here. You know, we talk about indoor air quality in almost all of our classes. Everything we do is really solution-based based on indoor air quality. And one of the main components of that has to do with VOCs. And that's where we look to you people for help. I know in the past I've done some VOC testing where from other labs and other resources, I've gotten reports back that I keep looking for my chemistry degree, and I can't seem to find it. You know,
some of them.
To understand some of these labs, where I've actually had to tell people, especially in large commercial facilities, here's your report. Please take it to the people that work for you, and you figure out if it belongs here. You know, it's just too complicated. So one of the reasons that we talk about you guys is just the ease of how your laboratory produces the material that we're able to read and understand, and the customer understands it too. So we're going to get to all of that, but I want to know right now the name change, because everybody that calls me still talks about, can I have the number for Prism Labs and stuff? I know you've changed it. What's the story?
Sure, certainly. So yeah, a few years back in 2017, we actually were acquired by a company called Montrose Environmental Group. Underneath the Montrose Environmental Group parent company, they have a vertical, which is considered the Enthalpy Lab network. And so from that, again, back in 2017, we had that ownership change, actually just starting in 2022, the beginning of 2022, they made us do that name change. So Enthalpy Analytical is what we're now called. If you call us Prism, we're not offended.
Well, that's a good thing, because it just kind of seems what everybody's been doing for years. I know I've been working with you guys for a very long time, and name changes are always difficult. So matter of fact, if you didn't know, we changed our name too. Normie was the National Organization of Remediators and Mold Inspectors. We've kept Normie, but the new name is actually the National Organization of Remediators and Microbial Inspectors.
Gotcha.
Much wider umbrella, which is really why indoor air quality and the VOC component go together so well. So if we're looking at VOCs and avoiding all the other types of sampling that our members do and the public, you know, kind of expects, what type of VOCs are really what you guys can handle for us?
Sure. So VOCs is a very, very wide range of chemical compounds. And typically what that indicates is that it's actually at a gaseous state at normal operating temperatures. There are some that are considered very volatile. There are some that are considered semi-volatile. And so sometimes those can get confused. Our ranges are typically in the volatile organic compounds. So again, that normal operating temperature of an indoor space, and they're going to be at a gaseous state. Those include a number of different kinds of products. Cleaning supplies, you know, the chemical compounds that are associated with fuel, gasoline, heating, cooling, refrigerants are on the very volatile end, but there are a number of them we can see as well.
Well, I know that when we do our testing, we often look for, on the clearance side or the post-remediation verification, VOCs that are associated with the chemistries that are used during the process. We really try to avoid, you know, a remediation process that causes more problems for the occupants than the actual mold or microbial issues that were there. So that's where your stuff comes in. But there's also a component of what you test for MVOCs, which is different than VOCs, right?
In a way, yes, they are slightly different. So VOCs, or mold VOCs, are considered a volatile organic. The mold portion of it is strictly an indication as to its relationship with mold. Now, we have about 21 target VOCs that we use for our mold VOC total. Those chemicals have been found in literature pieces and publications in the past. They're ones that we can see with our equipment, and they're ones that could be indicative of an odor that might be present. The mold VOCs are slightly different, of course, than the spores and some of the other things you might test for with mold, but they're only emitted as mold is actively growing. And so those are what we look for. Again, those 21 markers. There is some crossover with other products in the home that might have some mold VOC chemicals, because again, they're standard VOCs. It's just which one are those active growing molds actually producing. So there is some crossover, say, with paint. So if there was a lot of recent painting, we might have an elevation, and what we would show is an elevated mold VOC, but then we start going through that series of questions. That is the difficulties. We're not looking at the actual particulate itself, but we're assuming based on the chemistry, what we're seeing, what is actually present.
Because I've done some assessments myself where I've been in environments that are immaculate, how clean they are. But when you're dealing with the occupants, you can see that they're suffering from something. And I've been surprised a few times where the MVOCs are almost off the scale, 3, almost 4,000, which is extremely high on your scale rating for MVOCs. You know, especially when I'm not finding anything, you know, spore wise, you know, the spore traps are coming back clean. There's very little growth, if anything, but the VOC levels are really elevated.
Yeah, so our scale for the mold VOC, I think you got it a little bit crisscross there with the TVOCs, but typically starting at 8 nanogram per liter is what would be an outdoor average for mold VOCs. Anything up and above that 8 is where we would start to look to see any active mold presence in that space. Now that could be super small, like just an excess of overwatered plants, or it could be something a bit bigger where we do have something that's hidden behind the wall. Now, spores are much larger in terms of size, so those don't make it through the wall necessarily as quickly as what those volatile organics would. But then too, again, we have to take that with a grain of salt in looking at the chemistry, because if the compounds are associated primarily with paint, or we do know that there was some recent construction that had happened there, it may be that it is related to something different than a specific mold growth. So they aren't a catch-all, and they're definitely not the one-stop shop in terms of mold detection. So they're a complement.
So if I said that I was just testing you to see if you were paying attention with reversing those scales, you probably wouldn't believe me. Actually, what happened was I was looking at some reports from earlier today, and I had one that the regular VOCs, the number was gigantic. And, you know, that's what's sticking out in my head. And you are absolutely correct. It is a different scale. But again, still elevated mold VOCs when I'm still not picking up particulates or any other signs of mold, either because of the cleaning they did or just it's a different problem.
Could be.
So from your perspective, the indoor air quality arena, or space as we call it, how do you see the VOCs really fitting in from your side of it, not from ours? We understand our side.
Sure. So the way I like to think about the indoor air environment is we know that there are a number of different things that are associated with that. We have the particulates, we have molds, we have the VOC, we have some things as simple as temperature and humidity. But a large majority, when you look at the chemical makeup of the indoor air with the particulate in a general type scan, not just specifically for mold, but just particulates in general and what's present, in terms of a dust characterization, I liken that between the VOCs and the dust, you're looking at 80% of what would be present in an indoor air space that could be of concern causing symptoms. And so it is a major component, certainly for the indoor air environment. There are some things that we can kind of test out. I know we've talked a little bit about some of the instant read meters or monitors that can be used, but in terms of VOCs, TVOC is on a lot of those monitors for a reason.
It's interesting the way that you bring that up, because we get a lot of questions because we have a monitoring program under Normie Pro Monitoring where we monitor in real time, and VOCs is part of that. However, that is a screening system. We are screening the environment. We're watching what's happening. We're looking for anomalies. We're not identifying what the problem or the VOC is. That's what you guys do.
That is right. There are some limitations, certainly, in some of those instant or real-time read instrumentations that are out there and available. They're certainly helpful for what I call habit identification. So when we see on Wednesday nights, the building always gets cleaned, we see those VOCs go up. That's going to be that habit or that repeating event, essentially. And that can happen in indoor environments in terms of homes as well. There's a number of research studies out there that TVOC monitors are increased in terms of the totals, say when you're cooking, when you get home at the end of the night, when you're taking your shower in the morning. So you start to see some habits informing. That gives you some indication of quite possibly correlation on what's happening in the space that might be causing that. But then two, sometimes you don't know, and maybe you just have a total overall high VOC level. That may happen in cases where you have a brand new home, or a significant remodel where you just have a total high VOC and you can't pinpoint specifically to any one activity or even series of activities. That's where the testing through the laboratory is going to be much more helpful. Knowing that you have a high total VOC, and then starting to work through and identify what those sources are within it, or what the chemicals are within that are making up that total.
That's exactly how we put this out there in our trainings to our membership, that a lot of the testing is done is really on the screening side. And once you've screened and identified an anomaly or problem, something that's outside the norm, then there's more detailed investigative work that can be done, and you use more sophisticated tools. And that really is their understanding in this industry of how we go about approaching it. So yeah, I'm glad that you did bring that up, and it's important to understand the difference between the screening and testing, which is the language that we use. We've screened, now we need to test. Oh, very good. Specialty type of reports, I think, is something else that you guys are pretty good with. If somebody needs something very specific, you can help them.
Certainly. So our laboratory here in Mount Pleasant, Michigan, we specialize in VOC detection. And so because of that, we've really honed in on a number of different reports and types of reports that we can issue in comparison to some of the other laboratories where you were kind of indicating you get chemical by chemical, difficult reports to read. We've specialized some of ours. So with the total VOC, we do have a summary or survey style report where you get that total VOC, and then it breaks it down into types of products that are used, and then some individual compounds. But outside of our standard just VOC check, I'm wondering about it, we've also developed a number of other tests that are helpful, that test for VOCs applicable to maybe tobacco smoke use. We have some for fire, or a partial fire, like a structure fire, smoke damage. So if you had something that started in the kitchen maybe, and you've got smells that are happening up in the master bedroom, doing this test would help to identify and justify essentially that we have those chemical compounds present that were from that fire event across the house. Additionally, we have testing available now for spray polyurethane foam. A lot of the requests we've been receiving over the last couple of years, as we all become more energy efficient, closing up those homes, is that we're tightening things up and people are actually becoming ill afterwards. So we do have a test that's associated with all VOCs that are present that we can test, and then also actually a bulk piece of the foam. And so we make a comparison to say, is the foam still off-gassing in comparison to the air? Or is it simply you closed up all those ventilation pathways with that new spray polyurethane foam, and now you just have a lot of your own VOCs for your own VOC soup?
Do you do anything as far as some of the new hazards that are out there, like meth labs, or any of the other chemistries that are being used on the illegal side?
That is difficult because again, it is a chemistry process. So methamphetamine across the nation is rampant because they're easily obtainable compounds, chemicals, right? And products to make that. There are a number of VOCs that we can see that are part of a ingredient list, you might say, for illicit drug manufacturing. In terms of the actual drug itself, when it's finished, specifically methamphetamine, it's too heavy to see in the air. So it would be what would be more a semi-volatile or in a particulate, essentially. And so because we do the chemicals in the air versus like a surface dust or a tape lift and things like that to identify illicit drugs, that wouldn't be something we would cover.
Yeah, I guess fentanyl would come under that because that's another one of the hot topics right now.
Yes, yep. And those specifically, there are a number of labs that are out there that are specialized in those for a lot of the cleanup and the remediators that you've got.
How about on the investigative side? We're going a little off topic here, but as far as like fire service for arson investigation, stuff like that, to get more into some of accelerant detection?
It's not something that we've actually been approached for. No, we have attended in the past, and actually this year I will also attend the Restoration Industry Association's annual conference. In the past, we actually attended a public adjuster conference, and they too had a number of peoples there that were doing the forensic part of it. We touched base a little bit, but nothing that's ever come to fruition.
Okay. Well, the other thing I wanted to touch on is you are located up in Michigan, correct?
I am.
And I think you had said that you also have, I guess you call them sister labs, other labs or other types of testing.
Mm-hmm.
Can you touch on some of the other types that are available to you?
Sure. So we are kind of an oddball with our lab group. The majority of the labs within the Enthalpy network are actually soil and water testers. They're going to do large scale remediation, brownfield type stuff, phase 1, phase 2 for new buildings. That's a large part of what they test, but soil and water also for, say, PFAS compounds. Those are some hot topics that are coming around in terms of the residences. California have done wildfire studies in terms of the soil remediation that happens as large fires come through and what has to be kind of dug up. We also have testing available with like SUMA canisters, or what traditionally would be a TO15, if that's something that the job requires or specifies, pardon. And then the laboratory down in Houston, Texas does a lot with the oil and gas industry. So they do a lot of actual stack emission type testing. So we're pretty much the only one that does real indoor air within the laboratory network. But there's a lot of other things that are available to us at this point.
And that's what I was curious about. Two different things you mentioned, the lab down in Texas for oil, refabbing or rehabbing gas stations, stuff like that. They're always testing soil for that.
Yeah.
And lead contamination also. You know, especially on the older gas stations where they were using leaded gas. I mean, there's a lot of different issues that people are being affected by. So just curious about knowing the different extent of what you guys can test for. I guess our members should just reach out if they have a question about, hey, can you guys test for this?
I like to be a resource. That's one thing as PRISM we've always prided ourselves on, is being a consultative laboratory. We're not afraid to answer those questions, even if it doesn't mean that a dollar comes into our work. I mean, don't take advantage of that. But at the same time, I'm absolutely always happy to help try to locate the right resource for some of those tests. I've got a list of essential referral labs, you know, that I can send people to.
So do the right thing because it's the right thing to do is kind of like what you guys do as an anomaly to everybody else.
We try, which I try really hard.
Well, that's appreciated. It really is. Just trying to think if there was anything else specific to your lab that you feel that our people should really know about that we haven't talked about.
Well, again, I'm in the middle of Michigan. So just a little heads up, last week and again today, we got dumped another 5 inches or so. Just be mindful. I guess that's one thing that I've told pretty much all of our clients is that we are in the north. We are winter. Please know and please be patient with any delivery drivers and prep your clients that some of our fast turnaround times of 2 or 5 days sometimes do get extended a little bit when the delivery drivers can't make it to us.
I know that a few years ago, because you're talking about the weather, it got so cold in Michigan that you had to switch away from glass tubes to plastic tubes because they were actually getting so brittle they break.
The return sample encasement, essentially, yeah, we did switch away from our glass ones. We did some case study testing within the laboratory itself between the glass transport vials and our plastic transport vials that we found. And yes, our breakage has drastically reduced.
All right. Well, I have an oddball question for you now. We are spreading our wings, and we will be dealing with several countries outside the U.S. with other testing and processes and trainings. And is there any issue with shipping these types of samples from overseas to your lab?
The benefit of our thermal desorption tubes is that there is not any required chilled shipping. They're stable for about 30 days after collection. With that, I've got clients all over the world. I've got clients in Australia, UK. I've had testing coming from Singapore before. It just depends on where the location is. Most of the time, obviously, the carriers are going to be about a week out. But again, we still have about a 30-day hold time after that sample is collected. So international is not a worry. And actually, for international shipments, we have now also developed or have available our stainless steel tubes. So glass, again, transit is difficult. So because some of those international shipments can take longer, and it would be detrimental for them to have to sample again, we have our stainless steel tubes so that the tube itself does not become destroyed in transit.
Okay, I did not know about that. That's a new one on me. The next piece to that would be expiration dates on some of this stuff, because I know it's happened to me in the past. I've had numerous tubes, I'll have one or two that'll go beyond the expiration date. What do you do with those?
Well, one of the biggest things we want to let people know is that the sorbent material inside is very expensive. So typically, if you're working with some of the other labs that are out there and available, and you have to purchase a thermal desorption tube similar to what we actually produce, they're going to be upwards of $60 each. The sorbent material inside is the bulk of the cost. And so with that sorbent material inside can actually be reused approximately 10 times before it starts to go bad or starts to not regenerate as effectively, I should say. So as the chemicals get onto the little sorbent materials and get cracked or stuck in the little cracks and crevices, we heat that tube up and push those gases back off, or those chemicals back off. Again, it can go through about 10 different cycles before we have to switch out that sorbent. But if you have sample tubes that have expired, please send them back. They are reusable. They're green in that way that we want to have them back. We'll double check and make sure that our sorbent is still good. We can clean them again and then resend them to you. Maybe not specifically those ones, but any expired tubes that you have, we can send you fresh tubes for just the cost of shipping.
But it's nothing that our members could do themselves.
For
cleaning the tubes or refreshing the tubes. I don't want anybody trying that if it's
no, goodness, no. These are I do apologize. That was misleading, wasn't it? In the laboratory, we have a very specific room that has a number of what we consider tube bakers. And so they have a high ramp time with a constant flow of nitrogen gas through them to push and drive all the chemicals off. And then it goes through a check or a quality control process within the laboratory to make sure that that batch is clean.
Any new surprises coming?
We're working and trying to get some information around PFAS compounds in air. It's a hot topic in the soil and water realm.
Could you go into a little more detail what that is exactly?
PFAS, yeah, if you're not familiar with it. So per and polyfluoroalkyl substances, these are the compounds that are associated with stain resistance, water repellency, Teflon pans. They're also in a number of fast food materials packaging, that has almost plastic-like surface so that it doesn't become drenched or oil stained, essentially. And what they have found is that these chemical compounds are in mass quantities pretty much everywhere. At this point, they are actually in the air and in the rainwater as well. But that they do bioaccumulate. That's the largest part of the risk, essentially, is that even little bits of exposures that we get throughout our lives as we drink the water, Again, Michigan was terrible about that. We had the Flint water crisis. Now we have PFAS everywhere, with a number of locations. But those chemical compounds will build up in your body and can develop adverse side effects. They do anticipate that it's carcinogenic. The number of compounds are carcinogenic. And then it's also known at this point that there are a number of birth defects that can happen through those exposures and having excess levels within your body.
Well, that's not done as VOC testing. That would be actual collection of soil and then sent to the lab or one of your sister labs.
Right. Right now we're doing it in soil and water. But it is something that the EPA has developed a method for large stacks or people manufacturing PFAS compounds, similar to vapor intrusion. So as you get those gas tanks, right, they leak into the ground, and we have the water table that leaks up the vapor into the soil that comes into the inside of our houses. Similarly, vapor intrusion testing for PFAS is coming down the pike. And so that's kind of what we're developing and working on right now.
Yeah, I know a lot of our members, they also do water testing, drinking water, things like that. So I don't know if that would fall into this category of what your labs would be able to test for.
Yep, we actually have 2 labs that specialize. They have a high performance liquid chromatography, HPLC, that performs PFAS compounds, one of which is DoD certified. The other one is almost DoD certified, so Department of Defense. And then we're certified in a number of states for water and soil. So yeah, if you've got questions on it, or if that's something that you need in your area, I can connect you with the right people.
Very good. Very appreciative. Well, I appreciate you spending some time here with us. I know it's cold up there, and it's like, come on, spring. We really want to get outside and, deal with some other issues. I know that you guys have had a lot of snow, and you did mention before about transportation and shipping is impacted. And we see that all over the country. We have people today traveling that weren't able to because their flights were canceled. So yeah, it's unfortunate. So if you are watching this, please take that into account. Don't overpromise and underdeliver. Don't fall into that category.
If that's anything COVID taught us, with lack of employees for the carriers too, right? That's something we've all been battling, regardless of weather across the country. It just so happens that this last week we've had another whirlwind of winter.
It's funny. We're doing a lot of work right now with people under the term essential employees. Mm-hmm. And depending on who you are and where your perspective is coming from, what is an essential employee? Well, in the hospitals, the doctors, the nurses, they're essential employees. But nobody thinks about like the cleaning staff. Mm-hmm. Well, the hospital stops when the cleaning staff stops. So, it's having to revisit all of these different occupations now, and the importance is not so much by the skill of what they do, but of what happens when they don't do what they do.
All true.
So yeah, just something else that affects, again, shipping, transportation, stuff like that. Mm-hmm. Sarah, it's been a pleasure. We're gonna have to do this again, and get into a little bit more detail on a few of the other things, but I appreciate you spending the time here today.
I look forward to some more education opportunities. We'll get some topics together.
We're going to have you in on a few more sessions. I'm sure after this, we'll have a lot of questions, and maybe visiting again.
Sounds good. Thank you so much, Lance. Have a great day.
You too. It's my privilege to be able to introduce Michael Pinto, who's the CEO of Wonder Makers. He's a very valued partner with us at Normie, and actually he's fun to work with. So I'm going to bring Michael in. And I also have Doug Hoffman here, who is also a good friend of Michael's, and this is going to make for a very interesting conversation tonight. That's the easiest way to do it. So Michael, you want to come in and say a quick hello to everybody?
Well, thank you, Lance. I appreciate it very much. And yes, I was smiling because too much fun. When we deal with Normie, I know we get a lot of work done and everything, but it's just good people to work with, and certainly count you in that, as well as Doug. And just very pleased to be here talking about the NCMP.
Thank you, Michael. Doug, I don't know, you consider him a team player with us?
Actually, more than that. Michael not only is one of our senior trainers, but he also participates on our President's Council. I have a tremendous amount of respect for him and for his experience. And I think he brings something to us that we wouldn't have otherwise. So I'm grateful that he's become a good partner and a very good friend. So I'm glad to be here tonight, and I think this is going to be fun.
Absolutely.
Thank you, guys. One of the things that I've seen Michael bring to the group is we've elevated the level of training that's available to our members. We have the basic training and the stuff that's very popular, but we now have these more advanced courses that really gets to or above the professional level, if you want to consider it that way. Now, knowing Normie and all of our initials that we use for our classes, I do want to talk to Michael about the NCMP, which is the Normie Certified Microbial Professional. So, Michael, I'm going to ask you, what is that? What is that all about?
Well, quite honestly, this is a continuation of a certification that was originally offered by the Restoration Industry Association. And early on in the mold remediation industry and the arena, and I'm going all the way back to like 1999, 2000, 2001, thereabouts, it was our assessment at Wonder Makers that there had to be more for some people in the industry than just a technician level and a supervisor level, and not that those are bad places to go for training or anything like that. But we just felt that if the industry was really going to not just survive but prosper, there had to be a cadre of individuals that people could look at and say, you know what, those people are really professionals in their industry. Very similar to, a master carpenter or, an engineer or somebody who's got some real experience. And that's what we tried to do at Wonder Makers when we developed the certified, originally it was certified mold professional, but now with Normie, it's the certified microbial professional course. And that's a good move too, because it broadens up what the students learn about, and it really helps to give us that bigger picture in terms of the students coming through the class. So the basic answer to the question is that the NCMP is, as you said, the Normie Certified Microbial Professional. And what we're trying to do is elevate the knowledge of the individuals who come through that class so that they're more well-rounded and they're able to be the sort of person that if I have a question that just is really a tough one in the industry, that's the sort of people that you go to, the NCMPs.
I've heard it described as upper level type of training. Would that be a fair evaluation to classify this as?
Absolutely. And the reason that we would consider it to be upper level is that there's actually some prerequisites. And I know that can be dangerous, if you will, because it potentially limits the pool of people that can come for that training. But to even qualify for the training, a person has to go through either the Normie Certified Mold Remediator course or an equivalent. And depending on where that equivalency is, if it's from ACAC or IICRC, it may be that combination course, which is more of a technician and a supervisor course. It could be, somebody who gets into the CMA, CMR, where they're learning a little bit about the assessor side as well as the remediator. But like I said, there's going to have to be some level of training and generally experience in the mold field or in the microbial field before somebody qualifies for this course. Now, since it's the NCMP, they also, which isn't a tough criteria, but they do have to go through the Normie Professional Practices course, and that's just so that they understand what they're dealing with. Again, if they're professional and we have professional practices, it's pretty bad if professionals don't know the professional practices they're supposed to be following. So That's a prerequisite to, and that's built into the, the emphasis of those professional practices is built into the NCMP course. So it is good that they know that before they get there.
Doug, you and I have talked over the years about, people coming to even our remediator or assessment course that needing a basic knowledge of the industry. I mean, if you don't know how to take an air sample, how do you go through a course about remediation or assessment? I mean, to slow the class down to teach that makes it difficult. And that's what it sounds like here.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. We're old enough to know that there's some things that you just don't learn except by experience. And there are some things that are going to build on the foundation, the truths that you understand, the techniques that you understand. You've got to continually build on that if you're going to get better, and I think be a better asset for the public. Oftentimes, an entry-level course might get you into the business, might get you into the industry, it might get you a license. But one of the things that has always frustrated us, and I know Michael completely agrees with this, is there are some guys right now in Florida that are taking a one-day, quote unquote, refresher course to get licensed in the state of Florida. It's how in the world can you do that? We do a 3-day class, and in some ways I wish it was 5. So having an opportunity to really encourage our members to think in terms of developing their techniques and their processes and helping them better understand the industry is only going to provide better services, and I think more truthful services, frankly, to the public. And so, as we always say in our classes, if our members look good, we look good. And part of that is just making sure they're trained properly.
Absolutely. I think I'm going to add to that, too. I'm going to jump in and add a little bit to that. The other thing that we've seen since I've become a Normie member a few years ago and really got involved with you guys is there is a desire that the people who are in Normie who really want to be the best in the industry, they want to go up a step. And you see it in the folks that show up on the Tuesday night for the continuing education credit. You see it in the folks that are jumping around to the different tracks to pick up, information that's related information so that they can just be more well-rounded and everything. And I believe we see it in terms of the people that want this, as you put it, Lance, upper level training so that they can better understand how everything ties together and, be a real resource for both clients and their company. A lot of them come in just because we're seeing more and more transitions in these companies. There's, Doug, you said the we for older guys. Thank you very much. But we are seeing a lot of that transition. You've got a lot of people that are moving into retirement and leaving these positions of responsibility in some of these remediation organizations, and we have a lot of people that are trying to step up to those. And like you said a minute ago, how do they do that without decades of experience? And I'm not suggesting that this course, a 3-day course, is going to, substitute for 10 years of experience, but for somebody who's got, half a dozen years of experience in the industry and wants to move into one of those management positions and position themselves for when the owners retire to maybe even take over the business, being an NCMP is going to be very helpful to them, because one of the main things it does is teach them how to see the microbial contamination picture from a bigger perspective.
Right. We've talked a lot about, as I use the term, upper level type of training, and we've talked a bit about what's involved, but what makes this class really special? Is there like something you could really zoom in on to point that out?
Oh, I think the thing from my perspective, and having been the primary instructor for this for 20 years, the thing that the students all talk about afterwards are two things. One, it's a combination of learning and learning together. So there's a big emphasis on case study, and we get the students in the class, whether they're even participating online or live in the classroom. We have people working through these different case study scenarios, and honestly, at the end of the class, we hear every class where people say, and quite bluntly, what we learned from you, Michael, and the slides and everything was interesting, but what really made a difference in terms of this class resonating and us feeling more confident to go out and deal with some of these projects was working it through the case studies, because they're not simple. If the people don't know how to set up a containment and where they're supposed to put their negative air machines and stuff by the time they get into this class, they probably shouldn't be in this class. But we're talking about how do they integrate this into much more complex projects. And like I said, they really enjoy the case study. The other thing that makes the class special or unique or different is that it doesn't just end with a class. And I know this can be scary for people to hear that there's a post-class requirement, but that is, if you're going to be considered a professional in the industry, you have to demonstrate that somehow. And so we do have a post-class requirement. We call it a capstone, but there's a lot of different projects that people can take on as part of that class afterwards to show that they're actually the upper level in the industry.
Okay, you can't get away that easy with just saying post-class requirements. You got to give us a little bit more about that. What's really involved with this, and how does it enhance what was taught in the class?
Well, again, if you're going to be a professional in the industry, then you need to have a profile in the industry, right? You need to be recognized as somebody who's got this expertise. And there's certainly a situation where you can point to the certificate on the wall and say, see, that makes me a professional. But what we find out is that the people who are looked at by their peers as professionals have taken another step. They've taken the information that they know about the industry and they've translated it into something that's tangible. So we're very open in terms of what these capstone projects can be. We've had people come through the class and understand, we're way behind internally on some of the safety and health programs, or our respirator protection program, or we don't have good marketing materials now that we understand this in a little bit better way for our customers, or we don't even know we haven't been doing a good job putting ourselves out in the industry. So all of those things, we've had capstones in the past from some of the professionals where they do their own, marketing brochures or safety and health programs. We've had people actually do experiments. They come into class and they've kind of had what I call a burning question. And this one gentleman just was totally fixated on the whole idea of the 10 square foot rule, which came from the New York City guidelines. And he was very much reflecting my attitude, saying, well, if it's 9.5 feet, does that make it less dangerous than if it's 10.5 feet? What if it's 1 inch, right? And so he actually did an experiment. He set up a containment area and did removal of less than 10 square feet. It actually turned out to be about 6 square feet of mold contaminated material under controlled conditions, and then did a lot of sampling while he was doing that to show what the impact was. And if you don't use your standard remediation techniques like negative pressure and HEPA vacuums, and the New York City guidelines say that you can just take a piece of drywall and cut it out, right? And he pretty much proved that to be false. Now that was I don't want to say way more, but that was on the kind of the top end of what somebody might do for a capstone project. A lot of them will actually just take their information and dig into one subset of the microbial industry and then even write it up for an article for some of the technical journals or for the trade journals and stuff. And regardless of what they decide to do, two things are important in terms of the post class requirement. One is that we work really hard in the class so that by the time everybody leaves, they know what they're doing. And then if they already know what they're doing, we can also help them in class provide the resources and the guidance and the encouragement they need to finish that up after class, so that they do class, they do their test, but more importantly, this capstone project is what starts to set them apart. If it is an experiment or it is a document that gets translated into a journal article or something like that, it also raises their profile and helps them to be recognized as a professional, not just by Normie and those of us that are kind of in the know, if you will, but all of a sudden it starts to bring them some recognition from their peers in the rest of the industry. So,
what I'm hearing from you talk about this, it sounds like, well, let's look at the government as an example. A lot of the government entities, they have to put a magical line, of what level is good, what level is bad. It's not a floating thing like radon, 4 picocuries per liter, 3.99999 is okay, but 4 is bad. Same thing with the 10 square foot rule. To me, it sounds more like this class is a collaborative environment from all the people with all their experience being there.
Well, it's a collaborative class run by a dictator, but
yes.
I mean, it is, there's structure to it. You have to be careful with that. And again, I think that's one of the reasons that you see individuals like myself and Doug being the primary instructors on that class, is because, we have to have the experience in the industry, but also as instructors to know how far to let that run and then when to rein that back in. So, yeah, I would say it is a very collaborative experience, but it's under guidance of the instructors.
So let me speak to that for a second, if I could, Lance, because I think this is really fascinating, and maybe this is kind of down into the weeds. Hopefully it won't be. But one of the things that we know about training, and this is why I love so much being able to work with Michael, because there are not a lot of trainers that understand this. There's a very big difference between teaching high school students and teaching adults. And part of the difference is that high school students don't know anything. Sorry, high school students, but they just don't know anything. And so they're sitting there listening to someone lecture to them, and they're hopefully listening and learning something that they don't know anything about. With adult learners, what you've got guys that are in that classroom who need to contribute and want to contribute and should contribute to the discussion because of the experiences that they've had that the trainer maybe hasn't had. So having someone at the head of the class like a Michael, who knows the industry inside out, has got a tremendous amount of experience, but is still delicate enough to respect and honor the input that those students are going to have, makes the class, and as a term you said, kind of collaborative, but as he said, with a dictator. But that's how that happens. There are not a lot of teachers that can do that.
Well, and I want to follow up on that, Doug, and I say this in all humility. When I'm teaching that class, I learn so much, and one of the first admissions that I make to the students is that I am not a remediator. All right, I don't go out and tear buildings apart on a daily basis, and quite honestly, other than being out there, for the post remediation or doing sampling, and or sometimes getting out over the course of multiple decades and actually getting my hands dirty just for the practice of it. I'm not a remediator, and so. Right. And I never have been. I haven't been a contractor. I'm a consultant. I'm a trainer. I'm, a recognized professional. I'm an educator in the industry. But I have to tip my hat to the people who go out and do this every day. And by the time they get into this class, we generally, as you say, Doug, we have individuals that have a lot of experience. And with the right coaching, are willing to share what they know, so it does become collaborative. And sometimes it takes a half a day for people to warm up and understand that, we've got, I'm sorry, this is going to sound woke and horrible. It's a safe space for them to, open up and share their ideas and stuff. But I was using that term well before it was fashionable.
Well, it sounds like it's a extremely packed 3 days, and I guess that's one of the reasons that you have the post-class type of work. But it doesn't though sound to me like it's drinking from a fire hose. A lot of these classes where they pack so much information in. So, Doug, I know you've talked about that kind of stuff in a long time, and you've seen Michael teach his class several times. The flow rate, I guess, would be the best way to describe that. Comfortable?
Yeah, I think that's that delicate balance that I was talking about, as somebody who really knows what they're doing from a training standpoint, being able to give that information out in a way that it can be absorbed, but then start to see when the eyes are glazing over and take a break, And sometimes that just takes experience, just teaching experience and understanding how the classroom works. It is a lot of information. One of the things that we've really tried to do is to make sure that they have in their hands all the slides that we've discussed. They can take copious notes, obviously for an exam that would follow, the certified proctored exam that would follow. But I think the idea is that being able to gauge the climate of the class, that's just something that, as I said, not a lot of people are able to do. But that's why one of the reasons I'm so happy that we've got Michael on board, because I think we have several trainers like that, and they're not easy to find.
Well, thank you for the compliment. What I will say is that it's real work to teach that class too. I mean, to be an active listener, it takes as much energy as to be an active speaker. And each class is different, more so than the mold technician class or even the sensitized individual classes that I teach. The NCMP class is different because I have, as a lead instructor, I have a little bit more tendency to let some of that collaborative discussion run, and then have figured out how to bring it back, or how to, if I have to trim a little bit from some of the, subject matter that we're going to talk about. Like you said, they have all the slides there so that they're not necessarily losing any of the critical information, but we may, speed up going through some of that in class in order to give more time for the discussion, depending on where the discussion's going. Or sometimes, depending on who's in the class and the whole dynamics of it, or just toward the end of the class, a lot of times they're just tired. And so, a lot of times it reverts back toward the last afternoon of the class where I do a little bit more of the lecture style presentation than throughout the rest of it, just because if they've really been at it kind of hammer and tongs for 2.5 days, it can be wearing on the students as well.
Doug, as executive director of Normie, how do you see the NPMC course really, or CMP, affecting the Normie structure? What does it actually bring to us?
Well, I think this is a good time for me to talk about the Normie Pro designation, which I think is so significant. And that Normie Pro designation, which, oh, by the way, no one has yet, which not even Lance nor Doug nor Michael has this designation yet, was actually born. The Normie Pro designation was really born out of a need, as many good ideas are, to provide to the public a professional who could handle virtually any kind of issue, any kind of problem that they might face. And it was born out of this need when you and I, Lance, got a call from BP Oil, and they said, we need somebody to go offshore and do an assessment on one of our deep water oil rigs. And we both looked at each other and went, do we really have a Normie member who's qualified to do this? Somebody who has the safety training, someone who has the security clearances, there's somebody who has the experience in the background. Because when you get out on an oil rig, deep water oil rig, there's only one way out and one way back, and it's a helicopter. And there's not a lot of discussion or being able to, run to Lowe's and get something. So we decided, well, this is something that we should do. And so we did that. But out of that was born this idea of how do we get our guys to a master level? I think everybody's very familiar with what that terminology is. ICRC talks about that, and others. How do we get our guys to the level where they can handle even those kinds of jobs? And so our dream was, and our goal was, which is now coming to fruition, was to have enough advanced training where we could have the designation Normie Pro, and we could give that to individual in the Normie membership who had the training on sensitized individuals, regular CMA, CMR, understood how to deal with formaldehyde, understood building sciences enough to be able to deal with air infiltration issues, knows what a blower door test is, knows how to spell a manual J, has had the advanced microbial professional classes. How do we put all of that together and say, this guy, this lady, we're going to give this designation to Normie Pro? And then when we get those kinds of calls, that's the person that we can send on that kind of project. So the Normie Pro designation, which again, I say nobody has, we're still working on that. We're hoping that by the end of the year, with the help of the President's Council, we'll have some very specific criteria so that folks can get there and get that designation. And we have some now that I think we could get pretty close, may already be there, to be able to have that designation. That's where Normie is headed. We're going to set the standard for the highest level of professional training that's in the market today. And I frankly just don't believe anybody else has been doing that like we intend to. And with Michael's help, with the President's Council help, I think we're going to create something that this industry has needed for a long time.
And again, I just love jumping in on what Doug lays out as the foundation here. Truly, this NCMP class, one of the main ideas behind it is to help people see microbial contamination from a much broader perspective. And that was some of the stuff that you were talking about, Doug. There's great pieces of equipment and there's good things that we can steal, if you will, from the radon industry, like Lance had referred to earlier. And there's things on the asbestos side, there's things in the safety arena, there's things from all these different industries, general indoor air quality. And the more we can get people to think about it in terms of concepts and how these similar concepts can be applied to a project, but when we're faced with a potential problem, we don't have to be restricted to trying to find a mold piece of equipment or something, right? We can see it from a bigger perspective and reach out and realize that, hey, there's things from the indoor air quality arena that we may want to put in here. A great example, just if I can be a little bit, suck up just a little bit, is the ionizer for the tail of the negative air machine that's available, the PRVK, right? That's not really a mold remediation piece of equipment, or that's not an idea that really came from the mold remediation arena, but it's an idea that fits the mold remediation arena really well as asbestos abatement and lead and just air cleansing, air washing when you're doing whole house cleaning. It's a technology that we're bringing over from somewhere else, and people need to understand a little bit about how that interacts and can be used in so many different arenas.
So I'll give you one, if I can, Lance, I'll give you one insight into some of the things that are going to be different in this particular class and some of the other classes that we're doing. In fact, at the new CMA CMR class that we're going to teach next week, we're going to introduce the concept of air washing, low pressure air washing, which is something we've never done in our training before, but it's brand new. 2023 for us is not new to Michael. Michael knew what it was. In fact, he helped me helped me understand how we could fit it into our training program. But I think the point that I'm making is that our classes hopefully will stay up with the industry, and in some cases maybe stay ahead of the industry. And that's why they're constantly changing. You come to a CMA CMR class that we do today, it's not the same class that we did before COVID. It's just not.
And the NCMP class that we're going to do next is going to be different than the one that we did before.
Yeah.
And the other thing I would share there, Doug, and building on that, is that the only way we stay at and above where the industry is to rely on the people that are working in it every day.
That's right. That's right.
And tease out of them I'll be blunt with you. I'm thinking about it now over the course of the last 2 decades. Basically, every concept that's in this NCMP course, I have taken from, with their permission and with their discussion in class. But basically, I've taken from experts in the industry that are doing it every day.
Yeah.
And that, to me, is the best knowledge to share. Is not, and again, I have gone through lots of levels of academic training, but there's a difference between information that's coming at you from an academic standpoint and information that's coming at you from things that have worked and really made a difference in the real world. So,
Michael, that's so important on so many levels. I mean, we teach in our classes about, for people that are becoming supervisors, to ask the people doing the work that have the working knowledge, how to improve their conditions, improve the technologies, give them what they need. And that's exactly what it sounds like you're talking about.
Well, the other thing I would add to that, Lance, is that it's important for the professionals to look and listen and learn. As I said, the more advanced I get and the more little buttons and designations and all the stuff I have, quite honestly, the humbler I'm getting, because I just am figuring out how much I don't know in all these different areas that I probably should know to pull together. And I'm honored, quite honestly, it truly is. I think about it, I'm honored to be an instructor in this class, because I'm sharing ideas. And, you may have heard the term, I'm sure a lot of people have heard this term, standing on the shoulders of giants. And the crazy thing about that is that a lot of the giants whose shoulders we're standing on for this class are peoples whose names are not necessarily household names or even really well known in the industry, quite honestly. They're just individuals who go to work every day, do a really good job, and are creative as how they do it, and we're kind enough to share some of that in that collaborative portion of the class that then we can, build on and use for the next one.
I knew the word collaborative was going to come back in there someplace.
Well, I had to for your benefit, Lance.
Thank you. Anything else about the class either of you would want to say?
Well, yes, I'll just say that I think this class, whenever it happens, we're looking at dates coming up in the next couple of months. But whenever this class actually happens, I'm really highly encouraged by the guys that have been taking our CMA CMR class. It's not too soon to get into this class, even whether you have a little bit of experience or a lot of experience. I think if you've been trained by Normie and you have that basic foundation CMA CMR class, this would be a very, very good class for you to take.
I want to add something completely different, and that is that our experience in this class is that it's challenging. It's a fair amount of work and everything. That shouldn't necessarily scare people who want to be professionals. But probably the biggest thing is it's fun, and the people that come through this class, talk to me even years and decades later about the relationships that they built in that class and their team when they were on their, because we divide them up and then put them in different teams at different points in time for the case study and stuff, and how they got to know some of the other people in their class. And a lot of those, believe it or not, in 3 days become friendships and professional relationships that they hang on to for years and decades. And just, it's one of those things where if you're a professional in the industry and you start to see yourself as a professional in the industry, you want to hang around other professionals in the industry. You have that desire to want to learn from them and share with them. And so we see this, and we see it happen in a very fun way in the class. So the fun factor is actually quite high, as compared to some of the other ones like the CMA. And not that that's not a fun class, but there's so much basic information that's getting across in some of these other classes that you don't quite have the same ability to allow the students in class to express themselves. And the collaborative nature and the case study nature of portions of this class allows some of those personalities to come out. And basically it just usually turns it into a pretty fun class.
I think listening to the two of you, and we've talked for probably close to 40 minutes already, the way I would just sum up what I've heard is 2 words: upper level.
Yep.
I think that does it. That says it all. Gentlemen, anything else? I think we've covered quite a bit of information here tonight.
Well, I'm just really appreciative of having the opportunity to chat with you and with Doug all at the same time and everything. And I would encourage anybody who's even, remotely curious to dig into it. And they can certainly call Normie and talk to Doug about it. They can, get the referral. They can chat with me about it. I'll be happy to spend more time explaining it. But it's a great class. I'm looking forward to having the next crop of people come through it.
And I'll just tell you that I'm excited to say that we've updated our website at training.normie.org to incorporate information about this class, the NCMP. Now, one of the things that's kind of unique about what we're doing these days is that this is going to be a trademarked designation, which means it's based on Normie training, and the NCMP cannot be used by anybody unless they've been trained by us. And so I think that's an additional level of credibility that you're going to get in the marketplace if you're in the industry that you'll not get anywhere else. And I'm just grateful in a very big way to Michael and what he's been able to bring to the team. And I think he's filled a void, and I'm excited about where we're headed with this whole advanced training program. So thank you, Michael, and thank you for being here, especially for this interview today.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you, both of you guys, and have a blessed afternoon, evening.
Michael Pinto, CEO of Wondermakers, and Douglas Hoffman, the Chief Executive Officer from Normie. Thank you both for being here.
Thank you.
Yep.
Hi, everyone. I'd like to welcome you all here to an interview that we're going to be doing tonight. And my guest speaker is somebody that most of you all know. It's Mo Zulawaga. He's one of our senior trainers, a good friend of mine, and we have him here in the room. I will let him do a little bit of an intro of his own background because it's too diverse for me to try to explain. So Mo, a little bit about yourself before we get started.
Well, first of all, thank you. Well, for those of you who don't know me, I've been in the restoration industry now for a good bit over 20 years. And before that, I was an engineer for General Electric, for that in the military. And keep going back, I guess, been all over the country and spent some time outside of the country as well, working in Central America, lived in the Caribbean. And as you can tell by my name, my parents are from South America, from Colombia. So I've had a chance to be kind of all over the place and work all over the place. And now I'm happy to be here in Florida and call myself a Florida boy. And I plan on staying here. And I don't think anybody can get me out. So, and happy to be here with Normie as well. So life has brought me here, and I'm in a happy place.
Well, since you're so happy, let's talk about some serious stuff.
Let's do it.
Because we get a lot of questions during and after our CMA CMR class, which is one of the ones that where you specialize in teaching, and actually you do it in English and in Spanish, depending on the class that we're running. But I know that we're always getting these questions about technology and what does somebody need to start and what kind of equipment should I buy, and is there differences in moisture meters and air pumps and on and on and on. I think the moisture meter side of it is something that we get the most questions about for people in both the remediation and the assessor side because of the type of work that they do. So I'm going to put you on the spot and see if you want to talk a little bit about moisture meters and some of the differences between them and what you do with them.
Sure. Actually, that's a great question, Lance. One of the interesting things about the class is we talk about in several sections of the class, we talk about one of the most important decisions that we need to make as remediators is we need to make a decision as to what equipment we're going to purchase, what we're going to use. And, I always push hard on the concept that you need to make the decisions based on the application and exactly what the specifications of the equipment are, because for an equipment or technology to function properly, the most important thing is that the operator must know how it works. It must understand its capabilities and, most importantly, its limitations. And a lot of the times we are, we kind of just go right into using the equipment, and because somebody shows us how to use it, and we might use a small bit of the capabilities, but one of the things that is rarely taught from person to person is really what the limitations are. So I tend to talk about quite a bit about that in class. When we get into the whole moisture mapping section of the class, and I do explain a little bit about how moisture meters work and how they don't work and the things that you need to know. And that's one of the questions that I get repeatedly thrown at me time after time after class, where somebody will call me, listen, I know that you spoke about this in class, and it is it's a little complicated for me to just grasp in the 5 minutes that you were able to talk about it. Could you give me a little bit more? As a matter of fact, I've pulled I do have a file here that I can pull up with some pictures of moisture meters, and I'm going to open up here while I talk to you over the next minute, which has some pictures that I've done just to have this sort of conversation with some of the students. So as I pull this up, one of the things I am going to say is that when we go through the process of selecting equipment, it is incredibly important to know what exactly is it that we're trying to accomplish. What is the end goal of what we're going to do with that equipment? So in moisture meters, that is, we're going to measure moisture somehow, or at least that's the concept. And one of the things that the first question we need to ask is, where are we going to measure it? What kind of material are we going to measure? How accurate do we need to be? How thick is that material? Those are all things that we need to take into consideration, because not all meters are made the same.
And with that, there was a discussion that I was involved with recently where somebody was talking about moisture meters, and they all have different scales. And that was confusing to say, well, it's this percentage. Well, that's a different way of grading on this device compared to another device. So I don't know if you're prepared to talk about that, but if you get a chance as you go through them, you might want to toss some of that in.
Absolutely, will do. All right, so I have this little file open as a Word document that I have with the images. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and share it, if that's okay.
Sure.
So I can show some of these pictures and try to get the concepts across a little bit better. So let me go ahead and do that. All right, toss this over to the center screen. All right, so can you see the moisture meters right now, Lance?
Absolutely, you're good.
All right, wonderful. So here's some, I'm going to start here with non-penetrating meters, which actually goes right into questions you just asked, Lance, which is scales. So not all non-penetrating meters are made the same. Not all meters are made the same. And when it comes to these sort of meters, the first thing you do need to understand is that scale. What are those scales telling you? So I'm going to go ahead and zoom in on this particular meter right here. This is a Tramex ME5. I use this meter quite often during assessments. It is one of my favorite non-penetrating meters. I mean, I have numerous ones, as you'll see and understand why by the end of this. But one of the things that you can see right here on this meter is right up at the very top, you'll see it says wood percentage moisture content. And then at the bottom, it says comparative. And the wood moisture content is a scale that's right up here at the top, and it goes from 5 all the way to 30, while the comparative goes all the way to 100. So let's talk just in this meter alone. There are two completely different scales. So the top scale where we have the wood, it'll actually tell you the percentage moisture content of the wood, you know. And there are, if you look at the manual, depending on the wood, you'd actually have to use some variances if it's a hardwood versus a softwood, and they'll actually go by names. Like if it's a fir or it's an oak or something like that, there'll be some percentages that you would need to adjust that reading. But in general terms, this is a wood moisture content scale. Down here, it's a complete relative term. So what does that mean? What does relative mean? It means that for it to have any meaning whatsoever, it needs to be attached to some other value. And so what we learned in class is that before we can go take any readings where we believe the area to be wet, we need to go to a dry section of the home and take up a reading of the same material. So if it's wood, it's going to be of the same type of wood. If it's drywall, it'll be drywall, flooring, etc. So we can get what's called a baseline or a dry standard, and then that's what we're going to use to compare. That's the relative number we're going to use. So on those different scales that you were mentioning, for example, this meter right here, as you guys can see, goes up to 100. If I was using, for example, a Delmhorst Navigator, the new one, it has a scale up to 300. So as you can see, 300 is not a percentage. 300 is just a number, and that's because the sensitivity of that particular scale, you need a wider range to be able to get the numbers that you want. It's a different system that it uses. And so the important thing, the most important thing is that you understand as a user which is the best, which is the form that the way that your meter works, right? What are the scales in your meter? What do they mean, and what do they represent, and how do you properly read them? How do you work with your meter during different materials? As you can see in this particular meter, you have different materials, wood and timber. Do you have one that's a shallow depth? And that's because sometimes you have layered materials and you want to just grab the top layer, or you want to stay away from a metallic background, because that's one of the things we'll be talking about, some limitations of these meters. And a metallic background might cause a limitation. Drywall, plaster, masonry. So this particular meter definitely has different scales. The important thing to understand is, except for the wood meter, those are all relative scales. Okay, those are all something you have to compare to. As you can see, this meter will tell you over here just how deep it goes, and you'll see in the wood that it does show percentage moisture content. And that's what I would say. This is a great example of saying we need to grab the most simple tools that we have, which are wonderful technology, because a lot of the times we don't see these simple tools as technology because they've been around for a while, and we need to understand those.
You know, one of the things that you just mentioned real quick was the manual. And so many people that I talk to don't even know there is a manual. Sometimes you have to go online to get it or download it. And that's one of the most important things you could have for these types of tools. You really need to understand it. I've gotten calls from numerous people that were either en route to a job or on a job site that have called me and said, how do I do this? How do I use this machine to do this? You got to know this stuff before you go out. I mean, use it in your own home, you know, learn it, use the manual.
Absolutely. Habits that we now have in the industry or the people that have gotten used to understanding these concepts is the having these manuals right on your phone. Right, so we have them on cloud storage. So anytime, and I actually reference manuals all the time when I'm in the field, and there's a particular function of the meter that I might not have used in a long time, and I might know, but I might want to refresh her just to make sure that I don't miss anything, because as you'll see, there are definitely different types of meters, but having those manuals available to you at a moment's notice is incredibly important, and it's a good practice that everybody should actually take on in their business and their daily use. So I want to show you. So this is meter number one. Let me show you Something else is here's some of the things that I discuss with students when they call me with these questions. And one is that comparative range, as you mentioned. And that comparative range can change from meter to meters. So we need to understand it, understanding how far those ranges go, right? So as you can see, the wood moisture content go up to 40%, and this particular meter up here went up to 30. You need to understand those because questions can come up. If you think about it, if somebody's looking and somebody's analyzing a project that you're doing, and they're used to seeing one particular type of meter where their scale is considerably higher. So for example, on a non-penetrating meter, you can have wet be pretty high, pretty 68, 98. Other meters might be lower. So if they're used to seeing their meter and they think that your number is too low and that does not mean that it's wet, then you need to be able to explain that and say, well, my meter works in this form, and here's the scale that it works, and here's what the numbers mean. And if you don't do that, if you don't understand that, it might be a difficult conversation to have with somebody else that also doesn't understand your meter because they've never used it before. As you can see, the same company can have another completely different meter. This is also by Tramix. This one is really designed for concrete. And this one will have concrete moisture content, okay, and also for drywall. So this is a very specific meter, and these meters are excellent meters to use for very specific times and different projects. So if you really want to know what's going on with certain type of materials, you might need a very specific meter to do that. Just so, like I said, having a set of meters to be able to tackle different problems that come on is very important. Just like you can see for concrete as well, I might actually want to know the actual concrete slab, how much the relative humidity is in it, how much moisture content is in it. I might need to tap into it and use a different type of meter with a different type of plug that allows me to be able to determine this. Because, for example, once we remove floors in some of these projects, before we can reinstall the floors, we need to make sure that we've actually correctly dried that concrete slab, because if we don't, then we're going to have issues with the new flooring when it's installed. So once again, understanding our meters, our limitations, our capabilities is important. And I think limitations is one of those things that we definitely need to focus with each one of our meters.
Hey Mo, you mentioned a bunch of different types of meters, and I know over the years I've used combo meters. What I mean by that is a meter that will also do relative humidity, temperature, moisture on surface as a pinned or pinless. How do you feel about those? I've gotten mixed, opinions from people over the years.
Well, I have a picture of one of those here. I'll jump a couple of pictures just to show you. Whoop, here we go. So this one is by Protimeter. Everybody pronounces that a little bit different. That's how I pronounce it. So if I pronounce it differently, forgive me. So Protimeter is a multi-use meter. So it does have a thermal hygrometer. It has a pin moisture meter. It has a non-penetrating moisture meter included as well. And it's a really good meter. It really is. There are some drawbacks. There are some drawbacks to having a multi-use meter. One of them is obviously your meter is done and you've now lost all your meters. That's one. In the past, some of these meters that had all the functions did not have each function wasn't top notch. You'd have two of the functions that were top notch and the third one was okay. And I'm a big believer in having really good meters for certain type of projects for each one of those functions, whether it be a hygrometer. So you need to understand what application you're doing. But obviously times change, technology improves. Some of these meters are really good. This particular meter is really good. The kit comes with all kinds of accessories to measure different things, to be able to tap into wood, to be able to go past these little pins over here to go past the drywall and be able to measure and see if insulation is wet. You have multiple meters that do this, like that Delmhorst Navigator that I mentioned also is a good combo meter. My biggest drawback with combo meters personally is that, a lot of the times they have a lot more functions that I need on my projects. Number one, and number two is if I lose that meter, I've now lost all my meters, and it's not something that I really want to face on a project.
Well, that was one of the things that I had seen over the years that you had just mentioned about the sensitivity of the meters, that you give up some sensitivity when you have all these different devices combined together. It's really good with one or two things, but a few of the other ones aren't as good. And of course, the other thing is if something happens, you drop the meter, you break it, you've lost everything,
Absolutely. Absolutely. And the other one is they are pricey. They are pricey to have a combo meter. They're less pricey than buying really good meters of each one, mind you, but nonetheless, as to have one meter that can go bad or get dropped or now you're talking anywhere between $1,200 to $1,500 for top end meters, in the hands of a technician can be a problem. If it's your personal hands and you're very good with your equipment, you take care of it like I do, they'll probably last you for a lifetime. But we know that as it goes from hand to hand, that level of care might change. So that also comes into play. How rugged are your meters? And that's one of the things that I look for. I like rugged equipment. I like equipment that I can take on a construction job, and it's going to make it to the end of the day. So that's important to me. Absolutely.
One of the questions that comes up a lot is, what should I buy, a pinned or a pinless? And I always talk to them about, well, the pinless doesn't do any damage. You got to go to a different level of dealing with the consumer that you're working with about having pinholes all over the place. And depending on what you're doing, if you're testing carpeting, you're not going to see, like you're testing sheetrock, all these little pinholes all over the place, so you got to be prepared to build back. But you have a favorite either way, pinned or pinless?
Well, my particular answer to that is always I have both. And because it also depends on application, right? You do a lot of assessments. You've done a lot of assessments in your time, and during an assessment, in an assessment, a lot of the times you're not really looking to poke holes into a drywall, because like you're saying, you're creating damage to the drywall. On another type of project, for example, a drying project, that becomes a little bit less important. You're in an emergency situation and you need documentation that's going to be easy to explain down the road, either to maybe it's an insurance claim to an adjuster, maybe you go to court, something like that. And in that case, a pin moisture meter is definitely going to be a lot easier to explain, because it's showing you some moisture content versus a relative reading. And relative readings can be one of those things that's difficult to explain or people to grasp in a short amount of time. On the other hand, both are great. So one of the things that I tend to do is I start with non-penetrating, and then I'll document the edges, the far corners. So once I get to the far corners, I'll document them with a pin moisture meter. I've gotten really good at taking those pin moisture meters in areas where you're not going to be able to see those little holes. There's ways to do that. And then I'll take one in the center, so I have some serious documentation with my pin moisture meter, and then I have a little bit more documentation with my non-penetrating. But both are incredibly important. Some of the stuff that you are going to be measuring, you're not going to be able to poke holes in either. Stuff like tile, really nice wood. You're not going to start poking holes all over the place for really nice wood. So they both have a place in it, and sometimes I use them both because, as I mentioned in class, I never trust any piece of equipment or any measurement by itself. I want to be able to compare it to other things and be able to say that makes sense. What I'm seeing makes sense, because, like I said, they both have limitations. And one of the limitations of the non-penetrating meter is that it's not really measuring moisture. It's using RF signals. Most of these are using RF signals, and depending on what's behind that drywall or in front of the drywall, you can have readings that are incorrect. For example, if you have a pipe, if you have wood, if you have actually some wallpapers actually have metal in them, and you'll detect it higher. Pin moisture meters give you a little bit more of I guess an accurate reading in those type of situations, but they can also have issues where they don't go as deep because the pins on those moisture meters tend to be really, really short. As a matter of fact, one of the tips that we talk about in class is if you have like a thick piece of wood, like a 4x4, the proper way to measure that is to drill 2 stainless steel screws right into the middle of the wood, 2 inches, and then you measure with your moisture meter to those screws. So now you have an accurate measurement into that wood because the pins are too small. So like I said, all this equipment has limitations and it has capabilities, and we just need to understand each one in each application that we use.
You know, it's funny, one of the classes I was watching as we were doing in our water class, they talked about drilling screws into a wood floor from underneath and taking samples like that with the big caution, don't drill through the floor.
Yes.
You know, come up on the other side. You know,
Absolutely.
a little too far there.
Yeah, and by the way, we've all done that where we've gone a little too far. So it's just be very, very careful.
So I would say from what you've described here and the types of technology that's used, I guess the next level to go to would be moisture mapping, you know, and how that's done and how this equipment plays into moisture mapping an area, you know, and different ways of doing it.
Right, and there are different ways of doing it, and that's where, you know, once again, selection of equipment depends on what you're doing. You know, depends on the level of equipment that you need. One of the meters that we see here is a very economical meter. You know, this is one of the things that we'll find at Home Depot for $30, $40, $60, you know, and we're putting it next to another meter that's $500, $600. For certain things like moisture mapping, they could be excellent tools. That, you know, your meter does not have to cost, you know, $1,200 for it to be functional for your operation. One thing is very different when you're doing an assessment than when you're actually doing a drying job. They both require a moisture map, but the level of accuracy in that reading is not the same for each project. It's not the same. During an assessment, we're really looking that it's hitting that threshold that it is wet. In drying, we're going to want to measure every day the actual progress, and we want to be very exact with those numbers. And we want to have equipment that can read really fast readings in between each reading, so it can adjust quickly to its environment. So that's one of the things that is probably different from economic meters to others. Expensive meters tend to have electronics in there that react a lot quicker. So in moisture mapping, let me I guess I could use the same page here to talk a little bit about moisture map. I'll scroll down to the bottom, and then I'll get back to some of these little other tools if we get a chance to that we use in moisture mapping. So I'm going to explain the way that I like to do moisture mapping. This is the most common way that I'll do moisture mapping. And what I'll do is I'll use a little bit of drawing. So forgive me, I'm not an artist, and I'll just try to explain to you graphically exactly the way that I would do it. So if I had, for example, this. So if I had a wall that kind of looked like this, and we'll call this wall right here wall A, wall B, and wall C, and I would actually label them. So let's go ahead and do that. I'll do this really quick so it won't take too much time. I'll do a top bottom view, so you can actually see it from the top, and you can see the three walls. And then for each one of these walls, what I'll end up doing is I'll draw a separate wall. So this would be wall A. Wall B. Move the filter base. Okay. Let's make it look like this.
For those of you watching, I think he is having fun doing this.
I am having fun doing this. I love doing this kind of stuff. So this would be the areas that, for example, we would, in wall A, I'm a wall B, and if this continued all the way to wall C, I would do it, but I'm just doing it so we don't spend too much time drawing here. And the other thing that I would do to make it a little bit easier for everybody that comes down the road is I would do something like this. I would actually have a piece of blue tape across that wall. And about every 16 inches, I would put a vertical line. And so that would be the first section would be A1, A2, A3 across that blue tape on that wall. So, and I hope I'm explaining myself correctly. If for some reason I lose you, please let me know. And below each one of those sections, every 16 to 20 inches, I would take a moisture measurement as to exactly moisture content on that wall, or the reading, depending what type of meter I'm using, and the height that it went to, and I would document it around that blue tape. So on A1, I would put day 1, it would be the moisture content and the actual reading, and I would do the same thing on day 2. And what this does, it actually shows the sketch of the property. So if I had a whole property that was wet, I would probably, it wouldn't be these 3 lines, it would be the actual sketch of the whole property, and for each wall would have a front facing picture, which shows me exactly how it was wet as I found it and as I measured it. And you could write right here and take pictures as well. And on my sketchbook, I would actually write on the picture what the moisture content was at that time. So that's one of the ways that I would do a moisture mapping. You can simplify this. You don't have to go as in depth as I go sometimes. And sometimes I keep it very simple. One of the things that you can do is, depending on your application, as an assessor, you can actually use the blue tape to go ahead and outline your moisture map area. And I do this quite a bit, for example, on ceilings. When I have a patch of a ceiling that is wet, I will go ahead and outline it, and I will lay in, and sometimes I'll mark it right on the blue tape exactly what I saw. And what that does is, for anybody that comes after me, whether it's a mediator, it's an adjuster, it's anybody, they can really quickly see the areas that I found to be wet. So I'll actually moisture map it with my tape, document it with pictures. If I'm able to, I'll do what you see here, which is a graph or a sketch of exactly the area from 2 different angles. And the whole concept, everything that I do regarding this, and the reason I take a little bit extra time is, I always ask myself is, if I was in court in front of a judge and the judge had nothing to do with the restoration industry, how can I easily explain to him or show him exactly what was going on here? And that's always the basis that I take on my approach of either writing a report or doing a sketch or trying to explain something, because the reality is that we're not always going to be talking to people who completely understand restoration, who completely understand mold assessment, indoor air quality, any of these issues. And so it all ties together, from understanding how your equipment works, selecting that equipment, using it properly, being able to explain it, and then documenting the results into something like a moisture map. It all comes from basic thing is, we need to understand why we do the things that we do and how our equipment works. Very simple things.
Looking at what you're doing here, I mean, to me, it makes a lot of sense, and hopefully everybody that's watching understands this too, but it also looks like a very labor-intensive process. I know there's other devices out there. I mean, I've used thermal imaging and stuff like that work hand in hand with moisture meters. So how would you draw the differences or comparisons to using that additional device in conjunction to a moisture meter?
Okay, that's a great question. Well, one of those devices, I actually have a picture of it right here, which is this hydro sensor. Then this is what this is. It's not a moisture meter, it's a moisture sensor. So right over here in the tip, you'll actually get two little spikes, and once you put it into a something that is wet, it's going to beep. So it's going to let you know, hey, this is wet. Obviously, once I find something wet, I'm going to confirm it with a moisture meter. But this is a really easy way to be able to do a moisture map, for example, on a large area that has carpet and all the carpet is wet. So you don't have to bend over. This is the original intention of this product, was to be able to do that, to be able to walk around and be able to then do your moisture map on carpet. But it has great other options. For example, when we find cabinets, and the toe kick is removed on that cabinet, how do we reach all the way in the back behind that cabinet to see if that drywall or whatever material is back there is dry? And my hand, I can tell you right for now, my hand won't fit. So this tool allows me to just go right under there, reach all the way to the back, and do moisture testing across the back wall and see if any of those areas appear to be wet. Also, they're great for HVAC closets and little spaces in between the air handler and the drywall. Normally, you have 3 to 4 inches, and once again, I can't reach, but many times I find the moisture with this tool allows me to reach high places as well, ceilings and anything like that, without really having to get up on a ladder. Or if it's a high ceiling, I don't have to get up on a really high ladder because I have a little bit of more reach due to this tool. So it's a wonderful tool that I think everybody should use. Saves my back, and it saves me a lot of time. I use it quite often. The other one that you mentioned is thermal imaging. So thermal imaging is a wonderful tool, probably one of the best tools that we have for efficiency in our industry and for breaking the ice with the customer. But once again, for you to be able to use it properly, you need to really understand how it works. So one of the first things I always say is get certified, understand what it does and what it doesn't do, and always question what it's showing you. So a thermal imaging camera, we all know, can give us false positives, and any dark area is going to be dark because it's cold, not necessarily because it's wet. It's definitely going to be colder than its surrounding areas, okay, but it does not mean that it's wet. But you can also get false negatives, and that's one of my biggest concerns all the time with infrared imaging. You can get false negatives because for you to be able to see anything on that camera, there needs to be temperature differentials within the material that you're observing through the lens, and that's not always the case. For that material to be able to show a differential, wherever it's wet, that liquid needs to be evaporating. That's actually how thermal cameras capture that something is colder because it's wet, is because when you have a surface and that surface is wet, I'm going to pretend I have a wall here. As those water molecules evaporate, they're taking energy with them into the air. That means they're leaving the surface of the material cooler because energy cannot be created or destroyed. It can only be transferred. And that water molecule, as it leaves the surface and it goes floating into the air, means that all that energy is up here. You have less energy here. And less energy means less heat, less temperature. So that's what the infrared camera is capturing. But if that's not happening because environmental conditions, because you have some sort of material or paint that does not allow that wall to evaporate, it's not going to show you anything. And that whole entire wall might be soaked. It's happened to everybody. It's happened to me, where I've said, well, this is dry. And I said, well, let me go check, with my other meters anyway. And sure enough, and then you learn, I always have to check with moisture meters. I cannot trust the infrared camera by itself. I rarely trust any single piece of equipment by itself. I always want it back up to give me a confirmation and saying, hey, yeah, what you're seeing is truly what you think it is.
Well, part of every certification course I've ever taken or seen for thermal imaging always goes back to document it with another device, usually a moisture meter. And that's your confirmation. You're not seeing moisture, you're seeing an anomaly or an exception to what's normal. And the other electronic device is what confirms what you're seeing.
Absolutely. Now, having said that, if the area that you're scanning with your thermal imaging camera does show up on your thermal imaging camera, it is a great way to moisture map, right? Because now you can see the entire wall. You can document it with pictures. It's showing you the area that's wet. You can do you can do follow-up moisture meter readings that you can document, which I also, by the way, not only do I document it with my regular camera, I document it with my infrared camera, because I like to show that meter was exactly where the dark area was. So there's no question or doubt as to exactly where we took that measurement. And so it is a wonderful tool. I don't leave home without it. Absolutely.
Some of the newer equipment now, thermal imaging, even the lesser expensive ones, do image over image photography, which is they're showing you an infrared image with the regular digital image over on top of it. So you get to see the outline or the structure of what you're looking at, plus the thermal patterns on the wall. So it really creates a very good description for anybody looking at as to what's going on in that environment, after you've obviously also documented it with moisture meter.
Absolutely. As a matter of fact, nowadays, to me, it's the only way to go. Dual camera, so you're taking a regular picture and an infrared picture right next to it. So when your report comes out, that's exactly what you see. You see the regular picture, and right next to you see the infrared. It makes it a lot easier, once again, to explain to somebody that doesn't know anything about infrared cameras. So I'd rather spend a little bit extra on better resolution and be able to have that dual camera. And nowadays, like you said, even some of the economic cameras are coming up with do have that function, and it's a function that to me it's absolute must.
So we've gone from the basic moisture meter to the advanced moisture meter to the hydro sensor to the thermal imaging cameras. For somebody new starting out in the business, a piece of equipment to start with. You don't go out and spend $50,000 on a thermal imaging camera.
Right.
Where do you start? Especially when you want to start dealing with moisture in your assessment or your remediation projects.
That's a wonderful question. On an assessment project, you have so much more flexibility per se on equipment, because you're looking for different things that necessarily you would be on a drying project. You're still looking and want to make sure that stuff is wet or dry. You want to do a comparison. So you do have a wide range when it comes to non-penetrating and penetrating. So you can start with a less economical meter. The key, once again, is find out how it functions and read the reviews and watch the videos online for that manufacturer. And you should do that for a number of meters within your price range to find the one that is highly recommended and that actually does the job that you're looking to do. Some other ones, it's a different story. For example, if you see on your screen right now, this is a hygrometer. So you have non-penetrating meters, you have penetrating meters, you have moisture sensors. Now another way to measure moisture is moisture in the air, which is where we'd use a hygrometer. And on hygrometers, once again, an assessment, it could be, a little bit more flexible, because what you're looking for is a couple of readings during your assessment project, and a lot of hygrometers out there will do that. If you're in a drying project, for example, there's very few hygrometers that can stack up to the requirements of a drying project. This is, for example, one that would. This is a one that I like quite a bit. It says Phoenix, but I believe now the manufacturer is Vaisala. And what the differences are, for example, this hygrometer I can put in front of a dehumidifier, which has extreme temperature and moisture readings and low moisture readings, and pull it away and get very accurate readings right away in another location. Other hygrometers, less expensive hygrometers, you're going to have to wait a number of minutes to be able to get an accurate reading per location. So the hygrometers tend to be one of those things that the better you get, the better it's going to be for you for efficiency, because you don't have to wait all that time for the sensor to be able to adjust. Better sensors also tend to last longer before they become uncalibrated. So those are things. The newer hygrometers that are high end, you can also change the sensors. You can buy just a new sensor and put it in. So depending on the piece of equipment that we're talking about is dependent more on my guidance. So as to penetrating and non-penetrating meters for assessment and an infrared camera, I might say, listen, here's some baseline products that I think were great. I highly recommend. For example, FLIR makes I think it's the MR40, which is a penetrating moisture meter. It's a pen. It looks like a pen. It has a little flashlight on the other side. And I think it's $60, $70, $80. It's really inexpensive. And I think it's a wonderful moisture meter for assessments. Wonderful moisture meter, especially because it is so light that I can stick it pretty much anywhere, on a wall, on a ceiling, and it will stick and keep my reading, which means that I can document the picture with pictures a lot easier. I don't have to have my hand up, especially if I'm on a ladder or anything like that. It becomes dangerous. I don't have to hold it sticking to the wall and taking the picture. I can just stick it to the ceiling or to the wall, take a step back, take a picture up close, take a picture from far away, and it does a wonderful job. With a hygrometer, I would say definitely do your homework, get a little higher end, make your life a lot easier. And on a thermal imaging camera, one of the economic ones now is the C4 or C5 from FLIR. Those do a wonderful job. They do have their limitations. One of the things that I don't like about it is that the battery is not external; it's an internal battery. So once that battery starts degrading, basically your infrared camera starts degrading, because keeping it charged does become a headache. You have to have it connected all the time, but that happens over time. That doesn't happen immediately. The higher end cameras, like for example the E series, the E6, E8. I really like those cameras. They have, batteries you can swap in and out, so it's a lot easier to always have a piece of equipment that's functioning. You can have multiple batteries. They do have the drawback of a higher cost. You're probably looking $2,000-$3,000 for those cameras versus $500-$600 for a C5 at this time.
Very cool. Well, we have a few minutes left. I don't even know where to start to say. Would you want to sum up what we've talked about other than come take the CMA CMR class, or one of the advanced classes? But, how would you sum up tonight, at least for the folks watching?
Actually, I have a pretty easy way to sum this up, okay, which is what we talk exactly in our classes, is when you make a decision to move forward into an application to say assessment or drying, if that's what you do, know what your application is, know what you need, and then go study the equipment that's out there and choose your equipment based on that need, not on pricing. Okay, not on Bobby told me this is a really good piece of equipment. They have it on sale at John Don or Answer or wherever it is. Just do your homework. Do your homework. Read the manuals. Understand what it is that you're doing. Understand how your equipment works, and most importantly, understand why you're doing it. What's the purpose of you using each piece of equipment, so then you can properly document that purpose and properly express that purpose through your documentation to somebody that has absolutely no clue what it is that our industry is about. That is if you take the whole entire idea, that is the basic idea of what we do. Take really complicated things and make it less complicated, make them simple, so somebody that doesn't know what we're talking about can learn it in a quick and efficient manner. And the way to do that is you need to understand every step of the way, and most importantly, understand how to properly use your equipment.
Well, thank you, Mo. Actually, I'll ask you to stop sharing your screen for a moment so people can see who you really are.
Absolutely. Go ahead and do that.
All right, there he is. Well, I want to thank you for your time. I think we're going to have to do this again and maybe pick another type of equipment, maybe air pumps or Matterport or some other equipment that I know that you use and you're familiar with, and do some more segments on this.
Absolutely. Sounds good.
So thank you for your time, and we look forward to possibly another segment in the near future.
Hey, thank you for having me. Have a wonderful night.
You too. I want to have a quick conversation with one of the people that went through several of our classes and become a friend of mine, Skip Jankowski, if I pronounce that correctly. If not, please correct me, because
we're good, Lance. We're
talked
good
about this in the past. So, Skip, if you would, just tell everybody quickly who you are and about your company.
Sure, Lance. Skip Jankowski, owner of Pure Maintenance, Santa Barbara, out here in California, and started this, we're probably coming up on 5 years, but I had 24 years of background in healthcare, predominantly therapeutics, medical diagnostics, medical implantables. And I wanted to get into this business because I looked at the industry and said, it needs to be enhanced. They're not looking at this from a organic microbial standpoint. And that's where I felt a lot of the capabilities could be enhanced, and we've been successfully performing these types of disinfecting protocols, decontamination, and also remediation for water damaged buildings. We actually do remove damaged components where appropriate.
Well, recently, and one of the places where I had been in a class with you was you had taken the NCRSI class, the Normie Certified class for remediators for sensitized individuals.
Yeah.
And, I saw your reaction to taking that class, and I know your background, we've spoken about it during the class and everything. You've had an established business model. Have you seen changes to your business model because of this class?
Yes. First of all, let me say something about Normie. There are a lot of certifying entities, agencies, bodies out there. But for my lifetime of work, I couldn't be any prouder of working under and being certified by Normie.
Well, we appreciate that.
Yeah, it is elevating, influencing, top-notch, comprehensive. The body of its membership is extraordinarily knowledgeable. There's a thirst for constant learning, and there's a dedication to the principles and standards of care to do things to the extent that you can, to the highest degree. And it's just a very proud aspect of my life. So answering your question directly, it supported a lot of what I felt was important years ago when I started this business, and then has added to it. And what I took from that class is being implemented today, because, look, you can't know everything, and every day knowledge comes our way, and we are incorporating some of the many aspects of what was presented in the Normie remediation class for the sensitized individual.
Well, let's talk about your business. As a whole, you've been doing this for many, many years. Have you dealt with sensitized individuals in the past?
Good question. Yes. In fact, that's where the rubber met the road for us. Because of how we set this up, because of how we presented ourselves, our storefront, so to speak, on our website, the types of information we put on there, a lot of research data, right? Science was really stoked to be in Florida and listen to Michael Pinto, a gentleman who is a noted authority on this, and his life's passion and work, talking about constantly the science. The science has evolved so much that the data today is irrefutable. And that was really, really confirmatory. And then, of course, learning more in that class will add to our resource page. But yes, the sensitized individual, very early on, we started coming in contact with folks that had traditional remediation and they were still sick. And we were able to, we received unsolicited testimonials from them, emails, text messages. I can't believe this. My whole family feels so much better. And it wasn't just that we were doing something different. We were doing something that was that really Normie only talks about. And so, and that was long before I learned of Normie. And then once I found out about Normie, I went, yes, this is an entity that gets this. And I can't state enough that what we talk about, and I say we because I am Normie, right? And so what we talk about is something that no one else talks about. And through my research here, the other well-known name brand franchise types or independents, they don't talk about the biocontamination, the toxicity of the fungal amplification or mold spore and its byproducts, whether it be allergen or toxicants, that get into the environment. And Normie talks about this. This is a advanced, leading edge, influencing body, because we now know that the data is irrefutable.
When we do our CMA CMR class, which is usually the beginner class for people getting into this industry, we hear from people that have even been in the business 10, 15 plus years, that they've learned how much they need to learn.
Yeah.
You went through the NCRIS class. You've obviously been dealing with, sensitized individuals for years. Did you pick up anything that you really didn't know about, or something new or different view of it from the class?
Oh, absolutely. It was one of these, how could I have missed that, right? Smack on the head, wake up, Skip. Gosh, you got to look at this. The big picture, right? That stood out to me, and that was at the forefront. We're going to be talking about a lot of things for the sensitized individual, but let's not overlook the occupants or building owners or homeowners, social, emotional, financial, legal, I mean, you can go through all of the various dynamics. And I was stunned that this was an aspect that we were starting this class over, right? And basing it on everything that we were going to learn about had everything to do with the totality. You know, let's look at this from 30,000 feet. And these are families that have gone through a lot, right? The financial, you know, insurance denying this, the healthcare not paying for it. And so for us to have clarity on that person's personal situation, which is different for every client, and look at all the totality of everything they've had to deal with. Look, when you're dealing with the sensitized individual, they are in many cases, as has been the case with the folks that we've worked on with out here, they're kind of at the end of their rope. It's not just necessarily them. It affects multiple people. If it's a family, you know, I can cite several examples where it was a mom and a child, or a dad and two kids. The degree to which they are depressed and their lives are so negatively impacted by this is extraordinary. It's not psychosomatic. It's very, very real. To be able to have empathy, in other words, the Normie member already has a very good bedside manner, right? It's not cut and dry, but to have empathy and sympathy for what they're going through acknowledges that we understand that journey that they are on. And the other thing is the team approach, right? We're dealing with the doctor, we're dealing with their insurance agent, we're dealing with them, we're dealing with the nurse practitioner, we're dealing with the labs. It's a team approach. It's not just one, you know, I'm not going to solve that problem by myself. I'm in the rowboat pulling on my end of the oar, as is everybody else. And the objective is to get across that body of water in a straight line and conclusively and safely and deliver somebody to the other shore.
You know, because of your background, questions are going through my mind that I want to ask you. More specific to the class, as far as, well, let me ask this in a two-part question. One, I know we present a lot of resources during the class and things to help, you know, the students go forward and develop, you know, their business model with, you know, what we're showing them. So one, were there resources that you saw that you weren't even aware of that, you know, we put out there, made available through Normie? And two, who should really take this class? I mean, we have people that just want to be a remediator or an assessor or a water giant company, but who really should take this class?
All right, first aspect of that question, resources that were made available. The amount of data that was provided in the classroom was one thing, but then the ancillary supporting documentation in that large file that was provided to give us as much information as we could, whereby there's so much of it that you're not going to cover in a 3-day class. And our personal commitment to our profession is to go through all of that data. You know, again, Michael Pinto, a published author of hundreds of articles, and I've started the process of reading that. I'm constantly looking to gain as much knowledge as I can and, you know, absorb it. Tremendous amounts of data, tremendous amount of studies, tremendous amount of case examples, right? And through that entire amount of data, you learn, you pick up things. There's things that you know, that old colloquialism, you know, you got to overturn every stone, right? And there's ample justification for, if we think we're doing it right, we're nowhere near where we need to be, right? And so lots of data. Now, who should take the class? My personal opinion is, because we're dealing with living organisms that are capable of respiration, and it's not just mold. It's the mold, it's the mycotoxins, it's the endotoxins, it's the interaction between the microbial environment in totality. That's bacteria, that's mold, right? It's water damage, it's moisture. Well, if you're in this business, I don't care who you are, if you're a water damage restoration company, if you're a traditional remediator, if you are an industrial hygienist, you need to take this class. If you're affiliated or associated in any way, shape, or form within this vertical marketplace, this is a class you should take. That's
Well,
my.
With that being said, is there any other place out there that you've really found this kind of support, you know, that we're actually offering and presenting in the class? I mean, it sounds like you've been doing and looking for this for a long time.
Long time. No, Normie is, look, I in our own sidebar conversations, I have stated quite emphatically that I think Normie should own the penthouse suite within the IAQ category, because this is indoor air quality. There is no other certifying entity that talks about these. The sum of the parts is really what I'm getting at. There's a days to discuss mycotoxins. There's days to talk about endotoxins. There's days to talk about actinos. There's days to talk about all of this stuff. Normie's the only one who talks about it. Everything else, it's about how much water is it? Where's the fungal amplification on that wall? Let's get that barrier up, and the whole world within this indoor environment will be solved inside that plastic. And that's in my humble opinion, although very relevant, very important, at the same time, very antiquated, because the totality of the environment is adversely affected because we're dealing with things that are living organisms, right? And if you leave it, they're still viable. And there's no perfect environment, but you have to look at everything. In other words, I'll go back. Let me conclude this aspect of it with the following. When you go to the doctor and you say, well, my knee hurts, right? Okay. There's water damage in a kitchen, right? There's the bad knee. It's sore. It needs to be healed. Why do they put a blood pressure monitor on you? Right? Why are they talking about other things when you go to that doctor? Because they're looking at the bigger picture. They don't want to miss something when they have an opportunity to see and be with you at that moment in time. And it's the same thing here. We have an opportunity when we go into an environment, we know where the bad knee is, but we also don't want to miss something. And Normie is, look, I've gone through IICRC. I'm not bashing them. I'm not adversely, trying to disparage any other certification entity, but the comprehensive nature upon which Normie approaches these challenges is unrivaled.
Well, let me throw one final question out there for you. I've done a lot of interviews with people. I've talked with a lot of students in these classes, and one term keeps popping up about Normie, and it's referred to as being on the leading edge for specifically sensitized individuals.
Mm-hmm.
Would you agree?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Normie is and that's about, let's talk, your dedication to this, right? This is your life's mission. This isn't a job. Doug Hoffman, this isn't a job for Doug. This is, we know stuff, and we got to get the world out there to understand this. It's an avocation. And so Normie, National Organization of Remediators or Microbial Inspectors, it says it all right there, just in its designations, right? And you talk about influencing and industry influencing. The biggest challenge we're going to have are the people who don't want to readily acknowledge what we know. When people learn things, I generally feel people are want to do the right thing, right? And the people who don't acknowledge what we talk about, it's either they don't have the time or the interest to learn about it, or they want to avoid a risk. but we know what we're talking about. And from an industry innovator, an industry influencer, and I guess the word that pops into my head, subject matter authority of all of the certifying entities, agencies, bodies. Normie, in my humble opinion, for what it's worth, is the subject matter authority on this.
Well, we appreciate that, Skip. And I know we talked earlier and you had a really busy day coming up. You're 3 hours behind me. So why don't we cut this short and try to schedule something for the future? And we can do a more in-depth discussion on this.
Yeah, love to. Anything I can do to offer, what little I know, and as I gain more knowledge, maybe I'll have something that will also contribute to a future conversation. But just I'm pulling on my end of the oar until I'm no longer capable of pulling on my end of the oar. That's what this is all about.
We appreciate you spending the time, Skip. Thank you.
You're very welcome, Lance. Thank you. I'm humbled to have been asked to have a little chat with you this morning.
Take care.
Okay.
Everybody, we are back again in Chattanooga at the Experience Freight Show, and I have one of our Normie members with us, Barry Menken, and he's been around for quite some time, and he's always interesting to talk to, and he has some definite insights into this industry. So, Barry, welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm really excited to be here. We try to get to these, a couple of times a year, and obviously other organizations as well, and just to stay connected to the industry so we can be on top of our game.
Well, one of the things, and I do appreciate that, I want to mention is that you guys were late this morning and missed my presentation. and I was told to point that out.
Yes. Well, my hope was that I would be able to get a copy of it later so that I could digest it properly and really get a deeper hold of it.
This is a snooze you lose event, so sorry about that. So what brings you here? This is a ride for you guys, isn't it?
A little bit of a ride, not too bad. We're actually out of Nashville, Tennessee. So, about 2.5 hours for us to come down. And basically, this event, I think, is really beneficial just because there's so many different players here that crosses different industries, but we're all trying to get things clean at the end of the day. So that whole joke in the industry is, what is clean? Well, there's several different people here trying to clean from different angles, from different, sects of that business or different industries. Yeah. And so to be connected to them, I think, and to understand their approaches and the products and processes, and it's really, I think, helpful for everybody to be able to play together, if you will.
And it's funny because you mentioned about getting things clean, and we've started using different terminology that you can't really get something clean because what is clean? But we can make it cleaner. We can show where you started. We can show at the end how much better it is, cleaner, healthier, safer. And
yeah,
and that seems to be a theme traveling through this whole thing.
Absolutely. Yeah. And, today we can see things that we couldn't see before. We can see past 0.1 microns, right? So we have different things that we can say, you know what, we can do better. And, so much of the industry standards, I think, address the minimums. And, nobody should be bragging about getting a D-, like if you're just doing what code says. If you're in the building industry, it's like, well, it passes code. Well, that doesn't make a healthy house, and in our industry, it's like, let's not do the minimum. Let's find out how good we can be. And the technology now can help us do that.
Yeah, it's funny. We use more or less a joke when we talk about things with people doing testing and stuff. And to your point, a doctor that graduates med school last in his class, lowest possible score, he's still called doctor.
Right.
But being proud of that, yes, you're a doctor. Congratulations. I'm glad you did it. But then again, look at the people that really scored way up top. They're really engaged in the industry. They're there for the right reasons.
Yeah.
And that's what this kind of show is about.
Yeah, I would say when I come to these shows, the people that come here, especially not necessarily even the vendors, but the people that are coming, they're hungry. And if you care, you're going to show up. And those are the people that want to be excellent at what they do and learn from you guys, right? Yeah. So prime example. And to me, I've grown exponentially through Normie, and just being connected to all the different organizations the best way that I can, and help take the right things out of each one and try to find out what works for my business model. And it's been very helpful. So very thankful.
I give you a moment for a shameless plug. Who's the company?
So my company's name is Four Corners Environmental, the number 4. And I've got 3 companies. So basically, I have a home inspection business still. So what we try to do is our take on how we deal with the environmental side of the business. We come from a water end, from the outside in. So I'm looking at the building science, not just from the inside out kind of thing. I want to look at the grading. I'm going to look at the gutters. I'm going to look at foundational issues. Then we get into HVAC issues. We dive into all of that. And we see holistically, how's this house operating? What's the moisture? How's that reacting? And how are all these systems working together? And then we're just measuring food and water at the end of the day. You know, mold needs the same things that we do to grow. We're made out of the same stuff. You know, so we're just trying to help people manage the food and the water well, especially in a humid climate like we have, where we have high relative humidity all the time.
So listening to you, how do I get you to raise your level of dedication to this industry? Because it sounds like you're in hook, line, and sinker.
Yeah, I mean, I was a contractor for a long time. I've worked for different companies as I was younger, and I've worked with my hands my whole life. You know, so once I got into the inspection side after I sold that company, everything just kind of hurt. So I mean, I couldn't physically do it anymore. So, but I had all the knowledge base, and then I wanted to fill in the holes that I didn't know. And I've just been so hungry ever since then, because the more you know you can help, and the more viable you can be in your industry to have the answers for people that need healthy homes. And so Normie's been, again, a huge part of that process for me, and a practical approach for a lot of my clients. So,
well, and that's the whole idea. It's to keep it practical, to keep it doable, not make it so complicated and difficult and expensive that people can't afford to have the help that they need. So
exactly. And, you know, so many companies just come in and they just want to spout out how much they know and impress people, you know, by however many letters that they have behind their name. And the letters are important. You have to know what you're talking about, but so much of this is how you communicate to your clients, not just the what, so that they can actually utilize the knowledge and start to apply those things to their home and have solutions.
So how many of these experience shows have you been at?
This is my 3rd or 4th one, I think. So, yeah, this particular show. Mm-hmm.
Have you been to Las Vegas?
Yeah, that's the one I was at last year. Or was it? Yeah, last year.
Yeah. That is their bigger show of the year. This is kind of like their warm-up show they do in the spring.
Right.
And then in the fall, they do the big show in Vegas. So looking forward to that.
Me too. Yeah.
You know, it's usually a good time out there, and exciting, big, too much walking now.
Yeah, it's good for us because we usually eat a little bit too much while we're out here. So
that is true.
All the rich foods and everything. So, but the walking's good. So,
all right. Well, I appreciate you stopping by. I know you're here with a few other people. You're wandering and looking at everything. So
we're
enjoy. I appreciate you coming by.
Appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for stopping.
Well, tonight we have a special guest with us, Robert Pettyjohn. Now I met Robert, I don't know, several months back. I believe it was in Treasure Island at a class that we had going, and very, very interesting gentleman. And you'll see as we start talking tonight, just the experience that he brings with him to the table here. But I can't do him justice. I was actually reading through some of his, I guess, designations and certifications, and there's so many of them. I gave up trying to figure out what some of them even were. So I'm going to let him tell you a little bit about himself. But Robert, I just want to bring you into the room and say, just kind of let everybody know who you are and a little bit about your background, and we'll go from there.
First of all, it's a real honor to be sitting with you on this phone call tonight. You have impressed me from the very first time we met. And of course, the whole Normie organization is so impressive, and I'm very thankful to be here. And it's another step in this whole progress that you and I go through in our life, how we meet people and they influence us one way or the other. And I'm very, very thankful that my friend Scott Mitziff, with whom I serve on the board at the IICRC, introduced me to you guys and told me about Mr. Hoffman and about Mr. Adams and the tremendous relationships that y'all have got going on down there. And I'm glad I opened the computer and looked at and talked with y'all. This fits very nicely in my personal and professional development. And I'm very thankful for that. Yes, sir.
Well, thank you. So who are you? What's your company? What do you do in this industry?
Well, the way I can best answer that by how I started out. And I came up here to Wake Forest, North Carolina, in order to get a PhD in world religions. And everything was going just fine, except for the fact I was stone cold broke. And we had to get something to do. So I said, Lord, what are we going to do? And he led me to a fellow named Chubb Seyfried in Concord, North Carolina. And Chubb says, Robert, if you want to do this business, and by the way, I had, in order to make ends meet, I had entered an ad in a newspaper that said clean carpets make $800 to $1,000 a week. But it was one of these bait and switch organizations where they send the flyers out in the mail. We'll clean your carpet 6 rooms for $31.95. But when you get to the job, you have to add on and add on and add on because there's no way you can do it for that away. But I saw that there was people that had a lot of carpet and a lot of it needed to be cleaned. So I asked my friend Chubb Seyfried, who is also in the Mid-South Professional Cleaners Association, a regional trade association. And Chubb said, Robert, if you're going to do this business, you got to do this and this and this and this and this. And thankfully I did that and that and that and that and that. And an amazing thing happened to me just this week. And that is that a gentleman from New Jersey asked me to be a part of a Zoom call for the National Organization for Remediators and Mold Inspectors. And I could not believe that this happened. So what an honor to be here and to see how things have progressed from one stage to the other. And now I'm in a Zoom call with you. Who would ever have believed this 31 years ago? I'm so honored to be here.
You are most welcome, and thank you for that. We appreciate you being here and talking with us, and just bring the wealth of knowledge that you have, for our members to hear the things that you've done. I know you talked about the carpet cleaning industry, and I know you specialize, I believe, in like Oriental rugs and stuff like that. But I think there's also something out there about you with the infection control also. So it's like, this is a big gambit that you cover of, things for the cleaning industry and restoration side.
Well, you know everything about me, don't you? What?
Well, there you go. Okay, thanks a lot. No.
Oh, you're too cool, buddy. I like you. You ask very good questions. Yes, sir. Thankfully, my mom and daddy instilled me with a huge curiosity. My professor at graduate school said, learning is disciplined curiosity. And that means that once the spark goes off, you still got to get up and grab the encyclopedia or whatever, wherever you get your information from, and then learn it and digest it. And I've been very, very fortunate that I've been placed in front of the right people at the right time. My very first IICRC class was with Lee Pemberton, the great Lee Pemberton from McKeesport, Pennsylvania. And to have started off that way is incredible. And that has led one step to the next, to where now I have been asked to serve on the board of directors of the IICRC for the last 4 years. I'm a secretary of the executive committee, and what an honor that is. But along the way, as you know, other stuff happens. And we usually start in carpet cleaning, and that curiosity leads to upholstery cleaning, and of course, water damage restoration. And of course, people now say, can you wash this rug? Oh, yes. And I'm sitting in a home office out here in Wake Forest, and I can look out in the backyard where we used to wash Oriental rugs in my daughter's swimming pool, a little bitty plastic swimming pool. So even back then, it was a big deal. And we used to hang the rugs on the side of the fence out there. And one day it came up a cloud. And we had 21 rugs we had to dry in our house. So little bitty things like that add up. And now we're one of the most recognized, and I think the finest, most ethical, environmentally responsible, and ergonomic rug cleaning plant anywhere in the nation per cubic foot, without question. Yes, sir. So I'm very thankful.
Well, that is impressive. I mean, yes, this industry, unfortunately, especially in unregulated states on the mold side, there's a lot of problems with people being out there. Like you started off saying, a bait and switch type of an ad that you took, and I'm sure that runs rampant through a lot of the cleaning industry also, like it does in the mold industry. And, to hear you talk about the way that you try to keep this industry on the up and the way that your company operates, that's what we're looking to do. We really want people like you involved in this industry and pushing it forward, keeping it, I'll use the word clean, Yeah,
I had no idea that we were going to bring this up, but I was just on the phone call with my friend Penny Trailau from out in Australia. Just a little while ago, we were on a little Zoom call because we both serve on the IICRC S400 and the S410 cleaning and infection control committees. We're helping to write that standard. And she says that there are people all around there who want to fog something into your house and then walk out as though they've done something very special. But no, that's not the guys at Normie. And that's one of the things that attracted me to you guys, is that this is not the National Organization for Shortcut Schmaltzes. This is for remediation, dadgummit, and inspecting the way it ought to be done, for mold particularly, because there's a lot of people out there getting sick because it's not been done right.
So if I said that you have a passion for this industry, I think it's kind of an understatement to hear you talking now.
Okay. Let me tell you something. And one of the reasons that this has evolved over the years, of course, my mom and daddy taught me to do something the right way. That's a big deal. But here of late, within the last 2 or 3 years, we've been involved with some of these military families in helping to remediate the homes that they're in, not on base, of course, because it's hard to get on base and really do remediation the right way. A lot of these people who run the housing on these bases really aren't interested in doing it the right way right now. That's going to be changing. It is changing very, very quickly. But being into their homes where they've had to move off base and helping them clean and decontaminate their stuff that was involved in this mess in these houses. And thankfully, one day I was up in Kalamazoo, Michigan, meeting and speaking with my dear friend, Dr. Michael Pinto. And he put me on the phone with a lady named Shelley, who was involved in this military mess about 10 or 12 years ago, the very first lady to prove in a federal court causation between mold and brain injury. She is the one who proved on a Dalbert standard that this thing really happens. And she turned me on to another lady who was going through some problems there at Camp Lejeune. Her name was Lindsay. And I went down to see Lindsay and immediately saw the horrific circumstances her kids and her family had been placed in because of this mold business, and really became a passion of mine, because goodness, these are folks who are defending our country. And her husband even told me he felt better in old nasty Iraq than he did in his own house. That's a deadgum shame. And we're working to correct that mess. You ask very insightful questions, by the way, and I appreciate that, Lance. You're amazing, son.
I see it's kind of getting your dander up there a little bit, but it's questions that have to be asked. And we've done a lot of work on military bases also. We've done training on military bases. And we have our environmental task force, which is a nonprofit. We've actually donated equipment to people that live in really bad housing situations on those bases. So we've been involved with this for a while. So I understand what you're saying. But you said something very interesting there, and it's a little off track from where we were going, but you mentioned about causation of brain injuries. I was doing some research between last week and actually this weekend, and found there's some legislation and rules out there from the ADA, American Disabilities Act, that actually covers breathing and environmental conditions causing substantial breathing issues, which would qualify as a disability under the ADA. So, and again, I'm not an attorney and I'm just reading it for face value, but it's interesting that all of these things are starting to come together as people are looking for multiple disciplines, if you want to call it. And everybody's starting to find the same thing, that, there's a lot of correlation between molds and bacteria and illnesses and in the environment that people used to ignore.
Lance, you're right on, man. And thank you for your interest. My professor said that learning is discipline, curiosity, and you have that within you too. You go find the dadgum answer, and that's very impressive. But I've cried with these girls, man, at their home and watched their children undergoing these night terrors. When a lady gets mold going on in her brain, it causes some swelling in her brain, and that affects the pituitary gland, that affects things that ladies go through on a regular basis. And for many ladies, it's caused them to where they can't have children. And that is a dadgum shame that that's going on. But
yeah,
thanks to organizations like Normie and the IICRC and the S520 and the standards that we produce, things are, there is good news ahead if people are willing to accept it.
Absolutely. Well, in an effort to keep your blood pressure down a little bit, I'm going to change gears here a little, and let's go into another topic a little bit. Give you a little bit of a break there.
Oh, you're too cool, buddy.
I know you said you were introduced to Normie like through Scott out in, I guess he's out in Washington.
He's in Yakima, Washington.
Yeah,
yes.
I know Scott. I've talked with him many times. A really nice guy. But as far as our courses, because I know you've really started to look in and you've taken a lot of training from all over the place. What do you think is one of the most important things that we do as far as teaching a course? What kind of courses, do you find of interest, especially with your background?
Well, the most important thing, the most amazing thing about Normie is not your courses and all that stuff. It's the people that are there. I mean, goodness gracious, of course, you, Lance, and Mr. Hoffman and Mr. Adams and Mr. Zualaga, these people are really huge. Justin and David and Roger and the ladies that answers the phone call out there in
Arkansas.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Those people are the people that are surrounding, that are with you guys at Normie, are what's really, really impressive. Then you start to take a course and you say, well, dang, it's no wonder that you guys are so impressive, your coursework, because I'm sorry, that's
okay.
That's a phone call from somebody at Normie, as a matter of fact. I'm so sorry. Good.
That's announcing our training for tonight.
You can tell I'm old fashioned with that ringtone, can't you? Okay, good. All right. But you mentioned the courses. And to me, the most important course you guys teach down there, I'm sorry, but this is my opinion, is this mold remediation for sensitized individuals. Why is that? Because if you can do it for the sensitized people, you can do it for anybody. So if you can gear your program up in such a way that you're cleaning now for the most sensitized individual out there, then you're going to pass every clearance test. You're going to pass every important evaluation that goes on in somebody else's home. Plus, you don't know whether somebody is carrying that dreaded HLA gene in their body. We don't even know that. So if we take a chance and we miss something that we should have gotten, well, shame on us. That means you've not done it properly and you've not done it according to normie standards and regulations. And that's what's impressive about you guys. So to have somebody like Dr. Pinto, Michael Pinto, come down and lead that course is just unbelievable. That's pivotal course.
It is a good course. It's a very good course. I've seen him teach it, and
I know it's not cheap. I know that. This is one of the most expensive courses y'all have got. But if you can do this, you can do anything.
Well, you got the two rock stars teaching it. You got Michael and Doug both teaching that course.
Unbelievable. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Wow. What a thrill.
Well, let's talk about certifications. Like I started when I was introducing you at the beginning about, the different things that you have, and education wise, there's a ton of stuff that you do and that you're trained in. And I don't know if you want to ramble off a few of those, just kind of some of your background enhancements. I know you said you were first starting for a PhD in religious studies, but you've like morphed into a whole nother direction.
Well, when you, as you would that men should do to you, do you even so unto them, for this is the law and the prophets. That was written in another standard that we are familiar with. Jesus said that in their Sermon on the Mount. But when you look 2,000 or 3,000 years earlier than that, what Moses was involved with in Leviticus chapter 14 about the mold remediation, it's been in there since almost the beginning of time and recorded religious history anyway. So this is a huge deal. And thankfully, I've got a proper background for this mold business in our cleaning. Of course, we're certified triple master cleaner at the ISRC, but that's a big deal. I'm also a certified rug specialist. We're the only certified rug specialist in the state of North Carolina. We wash the governor's rugs and all that stuff. No, they're not his rugs, dadgummit. They're the citizens. They belong to the citizens of North Carolina. So I'm taking care of your rugs out there. Don't worry about that. We're also certified water law specialists, one of about 125, 150 in the country of that. If you're going to do a flood on water, you better know what you're doing. So getting involved with the Restoration Industry Association, Pete Consigli and these guys who taught this class the way it ought to be done. I mean, that was tantamount to a college level thesis we had to present to get our certified water law specialist. That was just really very, very huge. And the same way it is to become a certified master rug cleaner and certified rug specialist, CRS. That was a huge, huge thing to do. And now to be involved with Normie is just another. It is said birds of a feather flock together. And it's nice to be involved in a group like Normie that takes things to the highest level possible. And I'm very, very thankful for that. Yes, sir.
I like to, I bring it down to a very, very simple level when I talk with people and we start talking about, how things work and everything like that. And to me, the basic philosophy is, and I've said this before on many trainings that I've been to, we try to do the right thing because it's the right thing to do. It's that simple. You don't have to go any further than that. I mean, you can't set a higher bar. And, it's something that's practical and understandable to almost everybody out there.
And thankfully, the courses that you and I have been through weed out the folks who are not living by that standard.
Yeah.
And any schmaltz, any bedwetter can go out and take a course. We know that. But they're not going to stick with it to the end, to where the results that they're looking for is a cleaner rug, a healthier environment, a more responsible way to treat. We're not just fogging something in somebody's dadgum house. No, we're really getting it clean the way it ought to be clean, and documenting it and proving it with our field tests and third-party confirmation of verification of what we're doing. Yes, sir.
Well, there you go. Back to do the right thing because it's the right thing to do, and the results speak for themselves. They really do. I'm going to put you on the spot now. Sorry about that. All right. And I know you've kind of alluded to it, but if you were going to sum up what really you like about Normie, and if you were going to tell somebody about us, where do you think you would go with that?
Well, as I mentioned a while ago, the people are number one. You've got to trust somebody. You don't trust a book, unless it's a Bible or something. But you don't. And even the Bible says that its purpose is to reflect what Jesus did on earth. So the same way it is with Normie. You guys, man, are from the ladies that answered the phone call all the way to Mr. Hoffman. That's what's so impressive. Not only that, but you base your course material on standards that have already been in place. And it's no secret that whenever you teach a course, you show up there on your screen the IICRC S520, Standard for Professional Motor Remediation, for example. You don't try to appear to people that it's y'all's idea. You're the first one to come up with it. No. You know that you're a part, as the poet said, I'm a part of all that I have met, yet all experiences and arts where through gleams that untraveled world whose margin or whose horizon fades forever and forever as I move. I'll think of who did that in just a second. It's a 17th century poet. But you realize that you're a part of a long chain. You're handling, the baton has already been passed and is handing off to other people like you and me. And we cannot drop it because so many people's lives, so many people's well-being, and even our companies depend on it. And for crying out, our reputation. And the thing that has been my greatest asset in life is been that I know how to pick my in-laws properly. A lot of people get stuck with bad mothers and fathers-in-law, but my daddy and my father-in-law was the finest real estate agent in Northwest South Carolina. And my mother-in-law ran a credit bureau up there in Easley, South Carolina. And Dad never, ever said, is this the best you can do, Robert? You've got a master's degree. Is this the best you can do? No. He would come in and he would say, whatever you're doing, let's just be the best at it. And from my mother and father-in-law, it's been that way. And to be a part of an organization like that is like Normie, that is consistent with my values, is really, really huge to me, because I don't have to wonder about some schmuck trying to tell me something that's not right, or some bedwetter lead me into down some road that's not going to lead to anything. No, that's why I like Normie.
Okay. Again, we have to work on your blood pressure. You're getting all passionate about this, which is great. I really,
as Cheech and Chong says, this is a big dope deal. And my neighbor across the street was their lawyer, so he was busy for a long time. So
there you have it.
And, yes, sir. But these are big deals, and we've got for crying out loud, people's lives and their future children depend on what we're doing.
Yeah. Well, I
was just at a lady's house, a dear friend of mine outside of St. Louis the other day. We have an Instascope machine, and of course we've been trained by you guys how to assess a building indoor air quality, and being able to go in there and know that when we leave and after we prescribe what needs to happen, that they're going to be living in a nice, clean, healthy home. And that is really important to me.
Yes, it is.
What? You see, I gave a talk to a bunch of real estate agents the other day. About 200 were on call. My dear friend up here, Brian Pate, allowed me to address. He teaches all the real estate people in North Carolina, and I got on there and I told him that a clean air, a clean and healthy environment is the new view. They used to be able to stick you out when you're buying a house. They take you to the window and look out there. Just imagine your kids playing. Just imagine the garden growing and all that. No. The important thing now is just imagine you living in your sanctuary where you can go home and take the mean old nasty dirty things that you've come in contact with in your life during the course of that day and come to your sanctuary and heal and get better. My friend Jeff Jones in Oklahoma City says that when we get stronger, not while we're lifting weights, but while we're asleep at night and our body's rebuilding itself. Well, that's why, as you guys say in your class, that we breathe 3,000 gallons of air every day. I mean,
20,000 breaths is the average.
God, exactly right. So we're focused a lot on urine. So how many times do you urinate during a day? 9 or 10, maybe? And so how much water do you drink? I don't know. But you breathe in and out 20 to 23,000 times a day. Far, far, far more important. Yes, sir. So
Doug has an expression he uses for that. He says, you either have a good filter or you are one. And it makes sense. You know, Robert, I've really been enjoying this, and I'm sure that our members are too. I would love to have you back as a follow-up. Maybe get a little bit more into the infection control side and everything in another interview. If that would be okay with you.
Oh my goodness, yes, I got a lot of cool things to say about that. The coolest is the primacy of cleaning. We go in there with spraying this stuff and want to decontaminate everything in the world. But no, if you clean it properly first, you are way ahead of the game. And isn't that what our mamas and daddies taught us to do a long, long time ago?
Yeah.
And isn't it what, I'm going to show you this thing here. Isn't it what Doug tells in this book right here?
Yeah.
You keep it clean and dry. This is one of the most pivotal books, I think. I know it's kind of fuzzy. I don't know.
That's okay.
It's just mold-free construction 2.0 to the title of it. Everybody in the nation ought to own that copy, in my opinion.
Absolutely.
And they ought to be connected to you somehow, by George, to get your New Jersey influence. Because if you do what a guy from New Jersey says, you're okay.
I had a call from somebody in New Jersey today too, speaking to me. So it was kind of interesting. He thought I was from down south originally. I said, really? With my lack of accent? Yeah. Okay. So,
but listen, Lance, y'all got the best tomatoes and the best corn on the cob anywhere in the country up yonder in New Jersey.
Yes, we do.
Man,
hey, it's the Garden State. That's what they call it.
That's true. It's not all Patterson and Passaic.
No, of course, it was also 9 degrees out yesterday morning, but we'll go beyond that. But hey, Robert, I really appreciate you spending the time here with us, and I definitely want to get you back so we can talk more about the infectious disease control side. And
there's so much more to talk about, yes, sir. And what an honor to spend some time with you. You ask good questions, by the way. You're like a doctor or something. I thought I was going through a physical or something. You're really good.
Well, wait till next time.
Oops. Okay.
Robert Pettyjohn, thank you very much for being here with us.
Okay, dear friend, it's an honor. Thank you, my friend.
August 2005. It'll be a memory etched into the minds of those of us who lived through and survived Hurricane Katrina and Rita. As devastating as the 150 miles per hour winds were, no one could imagine the inconceivable costs in terms of loss of human life and property that the failure of the levees caused when it flooded nearly 1/3 of the city of New Orleans. With over 275,000 homes lost on the Gulf Coast as a result of the hurricane, 10 times as many as any other natural disaster in U.S. history, the city of New Orleans continues to deal with the results of homes flooded to the rooftop, unparalleled mold infestation, and potential health issues for the residents who remained to salvage what they could. Information and misinformation has been mixed together, and vulnerable property owners have been faced with the daunting task of trying to sort out the truth. And so the lessons are clear. Prepare when you can for whatever flooding might occur, not only for the potential, but for the aftermath. And whether a natural disaster or the result of someone's mistake, anyone and everyone can suffer the devastating effects of flooding. My name's Doug Hoffman, and I'm the Executive Director of NORMI, the National Organization of Remediators and Mold Inspectors. The information you're about to hear is designed to provide steps, guidance, and assistance for reacting to flood conditions in your structure. In most situations, a common reaction to a water flood event is to simply react and plan afterwards. Tunnel vision or over-focusing on the emergency can, at times, distract or omit safety concerns, and poor planning can leave you to fend for yourself after the storm is over. Caution and common sense should always be employed before any action takes place, and I hope this presentation will help you focus on the real issues both before the potential flood and consider the solutions available to you in the aftermath. Without a plan, the results of a water flood event will be worse than you've imagined, so there are several things I'm going to ask you to consider during these first few minutes we have together. The integrity of the structural systems may have been compromised depending on the nature and degree of the event. In all cases, if you are unsure of how to proceed or to create a safe environment to work in, contact a professional to assist you. A major concern in flooding situations are the utility services. Wet or submerged electrical devices, outlets, and wires can energize the area you're working in. The risk of electrical shock, burns, or even death must be eliminated before proceeding. This may require the power company to deactivate your service. And of course, natural gas and propane sources should also be protected, secured, or deactivated. This would include pilot lights, heat sources, and gas storage tanks. Depending on the severity of the water event, structural integrity should be considered in regards to the foundations. Foundation support could be weakened or damaged, allowing structural collapse. And with the utility and structural concerns addressed, the next major concern is the source of the water.